Here we are, bottom of the Smash Mountain. It's been a while since I've said that, but nevertheless, I have missed you, the dear viewers and listeners of this here podcast. I've been back a few times talking with Hada on the latest and hottest things that have been happening in Melee, but I've heard it from one or two people. They missed the interviews, so that's always nice, and I'm happy to say that we are so back today, specifically with XIF, who has been in the Melee scene one way or the other for a very, very long time. XIF, would you care to, well, first of all, say hello to the people, but also, how long have you had that Smashboards account of yours?
Hello, viewers at home. I am XIF. It's great to be here. I love Melee. I love talking about Melee. I am genuinely flattered to have been invited on here. And as far as my Smashboards account, it's funny that you worded it like that because, for me, I measure my career in a lot of different ways. But my Smashboards join date was November of 2003. So it is going to be old enough to drink in a couple of months now.
Such a grand journey, but yes, you also do not have Liquipedia results dating back further than 2007. You say 2007 FGC on your Twitter bio, so it sounds to me, because we all dip in at different speeds, a lot of dot kids talk about going to locals right away, especially if they're in regions that host locals. This was before Slippy, so if you were in a place like Lancaster, PA, for me, that's in Pennsylvania, you could have maybe gone to some bigger towns nearby, but as an 11-year-old, when I first found out about competitive Melee, that was in the summer of 2006, and I'm watching PC Chris versus Ken MLG New York grand finals and freaking out, but then going, I'm also a young small boy and I'm not old enough to do this. But it wasn't until the pandemic that I actually started to go from lurker to, hey, I like Melee too, and everyone's going, great, good, that's cool. How did you get in? What do you mean it took you 14 years to start actually dipping your toes in?
No, that's crazy. I love stories like that. I feel like, it's one of my favorite questions to ask whenever I'm at a tournament. It's like, I meet someone new. It's like, how'd you find out about Melee, right? What crazy, wacky sequence of events brought you to this exact place and moment, right? And, it's always fun to get the reaction from their side when I tell them I've been playing for 20 plus years, right? But I think every story is magical and unique like that. I think it's fascinating. For me, I didn't learn about Melee that much further before that. So, I always have to give shout outs to my original stomping grounds, GameFAQs. That was where I did a lot of my teenage years. Was on the forums of GameFAQs, and the Melee forums in particular. I was doing a lot of the one-player stuff, like home run contests and break the targets and whatnot. And from there, I found out about competitive Melee and Smashboards, and somebody had linked Smashboards in some form or fashion, or told me to Google Smash World forums. And I found the forums and I signed up, and then less than 6 months later, spring of 2004, I was 15 years old and going to my first Melee local.
That is incredible. Now, you have also been playing Peach for almost all of this time, or have you had phases where you've dropped Peach and tried to get into other characters?
No, it's funny. I probably went through 6 different mains. So when I first started playing, my first tournament, I was a Sheik main. Even before that, I was a Falcon main. And then I tried playing Doc. I tried playing Mario. I was a Zelda main. So the very first major I ever went to was Melee FC3, which is from, if anyone remembers, from the Smash documentary, it's the East versus West group battle, right?
That's crazy that that's your first event.
Yeah. Well, I had been going to tournaments for a year at that point, right? And then I had heard about how great Melee FC was, and then there was other tournaments what was it? Tournament Go, Matt Deasy's events, and then Game Over, the one that Chillin' Dude ran out on the East Coast. And then, Melee FC3 was announced, and I was desperate to go to this. I was I have to go. I was obsessed with Melee at the time. I was playing Melee so much. So I get, I like to make fun of some of the grinders out there that are playing net play for 8 to 12 hours a day, right? But if I had access to net play when I was in high school, it would have been over. I would have been such a degenerate with that. Holy crap. But I remember for Melee FC3, so this I would have been 16. I would have been a sophomore, I think, sophomore or junior, and I emailed my dad. I emailed my dad because I didn't even have a cell phone at the time, asking if he could help me make a trip out there. I was gonna like work a summer job and then try to like pay it back, right? You know, I need like the flight and like the entry now, but you know, help me out. And he ended up being really nice about it and ended up paying for the trip for me. Actually, it was my Christmas and birthday gift. My parents are divorced, so I don't see my dad too often. So, or at the time, I did not. Um, so yeah, I ended up at South Bend, Indiana, and like at some church like next to a cornfield, watching Titans of Melee play this epic 10v10 and being a little salty because or no. East Coast won the crew battle. No, we were salty because the South got like left out. They like
Yes.
like Georgia, Florida, like even though we were East Coast, they don't want like any of those states associated with the East Coast. They want like New York and like NDVA, right? They didn't care about, you know, any of the Florida players. Florida players were kind of like considered bad at the time. Funny to think about now,
That's
right?
that's what I hear. That's what I've heard from the other Melee heads who've come from that generation. They thought Florida was bad. There's a video of, I think it was husband who was trashing Florida, literally
Oh
cutting it
yeah,
off from
and
the
throwing it into the
continental
Atlantic.
North
I
America.
was I was so mad. I was so as a teenager that pissed me off so much. And like looking back on it now, it's like one of the funniest bits in Melee history. I think it's underrated. I don't think people talk about it a lot, right? Like before the Leffen diss track, there was husband and wife and Team Ben like yelling into a camcorder in 2005, talking about how they were going to curb stomp everyone at every MLG, right? Because that's what those videos were for. It was for their MLG like around the country thing. And I was originally from Florida. I got started playing in South Florida with Green Mario, who I went to high school with, who was the best Mario in the country for a while, and is now the world record holder for Zelda any percent. Um, I also went to high school with Mini Ganondorf player, who was really really good back then. Almost took a set off of PP at one of the tipped offs. And then the one that most people would know, we didn't go to high school together, but they lived like 10 minutes away from me. Was Beer Man, the Falco player. Um, and we were all like trying to defend Florida, going up to MLG Orlando. And in 2005, we got whooped. Like husband, like Eddie, the Ganondorf player, they all like outplaced us. And I was big mad. I was big mad. And then 2006 rolled around, and we were like starting to make a name for ourselves. That was when some of the like Florida players started to travel more because it was like me, Lamb Chops, Green Mario, Linguini. We were all like killing it going to these out of state tournaments, and I think that started in 2006.
That's awesome that there's, again, because not everybody gets off to a super hot, fast start. We do know of the Ken, Isaiah, and Azin early days and the rise of all the in-betweens, as I like to call them nowadays, because Mewtwo King was not the god of Melee until closer to 2006 is when like his results started to outpace like the Kens of the world. But then
Yeah, I wouldn't even say like to become like world number one. It wasn't until 2007 that Mewtwo King did that,
mhm.
and that is a good point. People forget Mewtwo King was a baddie. He used to be one of like the joke like bad players of Smash Boards because like he would go on there and you know he was like around my age, you know, a teenager talking about, well, you don't understand, you know, because of this and this. He's like trying to like construct all these arguments, but he wasn't like actually entering brackets, right?
Mhm.
And he had all this knowledge, but none of like the like I guess like the in world like experience. And it took him a year or something like that. It took him a while of him starting to go to events before he started doing well, but he really took off. And I remember during like it was like the very first like power rankings that Chillin' Dude would do on Smash Boards, and like it was I'm pretty sure it was a worldwide power ranking, but didn't really have anyone like outside of the US. And he had Mewtwo King.
Because
We were like 15. What's up?
Please continue. Where was Music King on Chillin' Dudes? Very official. Yeah, I don't think that there's anything outside of the United States in the world. Honestly, I think it's just all ocean rankings.
Well, like, listen, at the time, like the travel wasn't there, right? It was hard to
Right.
get people to travel like across the country, right? The only people that really did it were Captain Jack and Ken going to Japan, right? So like, Ken beat Captain Jack or whatever. Just like, all right, we're done with Japan now, and it's just we did not have a great. Little did we know what was in store for us, not only in Japan but in Europe as well. Um, but no, back then I remember Chillin' Dude had Music King as like number like 12 or 15 or something like that, like in the country or world or whatever. And he had the results to back it up. People were like, what is this? Like, this is a joke, blah, blah, blah. He's like, Music King goes to these tournaments and he keeps winning. So like maybe you should come to these tournaments and win.
Yeah, that matters. I think there, like in those times, it was him entering events, not quite being able to place at like the top three or however you want to phrase it, but making top eights. I mean, he was there at the MLG like the Las Vegas event. I think
Mm-hmm.
might have beat Ken even at that specific. Well, he was starting to beat Ken at the time. Well, anyway, I want to hear your perspective on when Brawl came out, because it's always fun to hear different people's perspectives on when they first started playing Brawl and how much they did not ever really want to play it again. And then some people did try to give it a chance, but what ended up happening to the community was, and social media had not garnered enough steam to really truly connect everyone. There was a big fracturing that happened because that was the first sequel that Smash had after Melee. So there was a big assumption on it'll be very similar to Melee, when obviously it was closer to being the exact opposite.
Yeah, so I remember that time very vividly, and I think a lot of the vibe gets lost of what it was like during the build-up of Brawl's release, as opposed to like what gets talked about today afterwards about how like, oh, Brawl wasn't it, and we all like went back to Melee. Before Brawl came out, it was not conceivable for any of us that Brawl would be a bad game. We just like it just didn't occur to us that the game could be flawed in such a way that we would even want to go back to Melee. Like every time like some character got announced for Brawl, we would get so hyped. This was during 2008, mind you. This is like peak like hype train for Obama, right? And we were not saying like Obama for president. We were saying Obama for Brawl. All right.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is we were talking about. We were talking about Obama's final smash. We were trying to like theory craft that. Like it was everything. Like a Brawl was like gold. Like for us, right? It was just we were so happy for it. And there was a little bit. There was a little bit of the wait a moment when they all went to play the demo version of it before release. I can't remember what the event was. It was a few months before the release in Japan. Some of the top players out on the West Coast, I think, were able to go and test it out, and they're like, this game is different, don't like go in there expecting Melee, it's different, right? When the game came out, mind you, this doesn't even mention like for my perspective, my personal perspective is that Brawl came out the weekend of Pound 3. So Pound 3 was like the first weekend of February of 2008, I want to say, but that was in Japan. It was another 6 weeks before it came out in the US, something like
Right.
that. It was like almost 2 months before the US release happened. And all of us, it was me, it was Mike G, it was Jigglypuff Player Soft, Green Mario, a bunch of other people. It was like maybe like 6 or 7 of us. Full Metal, used to, the old TO for Tipped Off was part of this group as well. We're all in Georgia, and we're all like, look, we gotta get a Japanese Wii. We gotta get a Japanese copy of Brawl. We cannot fall behind. That's like 6 weeks of like training where we could be the very best. Like it was serious, and we dropped like $500-600 to import a Japanese Wii and a Japanese copy of Brawl to be able to like play it day one. And I think we got to play it day 2 or day 3, but it was yeah, we're very serious about it. And for me personally, I played nothing but Brawl for like 4 months or something like that. I gave it a good honest shot. And I think a lot of people did. I think a lot of people, like, everyone dropped Melee. Like, nobody was playing Melee, right? It was months before I touched Melee again. Most people were like that. I think I was probably one of the longer holdouts, but I would say for at least the first like few months that everyone was on the Brawl train. We're all like in it. Like I remember thinking, I was like, oh, like it's a lot slower, and it's not like a lot of combos, but it's just more cerebral. It's like I got more mind games going on. This is still during
Mm,
peak mind games melee era, right?
the shield's so big.
So we we really like wanted it to succeed. I don't think anybody wanted Brawl to fail and for Melee to come back like it did. It just happened. Just it was very organic. It wasn't like a bunch of like hyper sweat Melee players being like, no, I don't want to give up my game. There's only one game. This is the only game I like to play. It was just this game came out, like all of us kind of felt the same way about it. Like there's a lot of disappointment. I know a lot of people like Brawl. I know a lot of people got into Melee because of Brawl. Um, but I think for the bulk of us, it was just, we just wanted to have fun like we did before, and it wasn't with Brawl, it was with Melee, and we just all kind of realized at the same time that hey, we could just keep playing Melee, right? Like we got our GameCubes, right? Like the Wii's work with the GameCube disc, right? We just play on those, like we could just play more Melee, right?
And when you look back at Brawl nowadays, the really messed up thing is that that game has more advanced tech and little things that you can exploit than Smash 4 and Ultimate. That's the sad thing. Is that
Yeah,
there's
I've
stuff like
heard.
the Dacus and the infinite cape glitch, just like things that you can surprise a new player with. Not that any new gamer is picking up a Wii and playing Brawl, but these things. If you just thought of something, you just thought of something.
No, I remember when the Infinite Cape glitch was announced, right? Because this was already when we were like kind of like we were good on Brawl, right? Like we were back to Melee. It's just like, man, that Brawl game wasn't it, huh, fellas? I remember like thinking about it, and Meta Knight had like started to become a real menace, right? And I was like, oh my god, everything that they find out about this character makes it more and more broken. And I remember joking with my friends, I was like, pretty soon you're just going to be able to remove his hurt box from the screen. You just won't be able to get hit. And then like a month later, like literally just like delete yourself from the screen. I'm just like, well, that tracks.
I've tried doing it after I found out about it, and I just thought, man, I want my thumbs to work into I couldn't even conceive of being 28 years old that I am now, but I'm glad 14-year-old me or whatever age thought I shouldn't try to do this on a regular basis. This feels like a lot.
Yeah, the actual technique, like the input or whatever, is kind of cursed. Don't get me wrong, but I think the fact that it exists is an affront to fighting games.
I like the fact that there's still, to a limited extent, chain grabbing, that the ICs are still broken, that there's characters that have like little things going on. That Falco still has auto cancel laser. It's kind of like how it is in Smash 64, which is a game I really love. People talk about, oh, if you want to play a floaty Smash game, you should play Brawl. No, play 64. The hit stun makes so many combos possible. I love
agree.
that game.
I'm a big 64 player as well. So back before I got this lovely house that I'm in right now, I lived with a friend of mine who used to be like one of like the OG like hidden bosses of Chilera Smash 64. So back in like the late 2000s, early 2010s, there was an online client kind of similar to Dolphin, or not Dolphin's emulator, Slippy, similar to Slippy, called Chilera, that used to be for N64 games. And you used to be able to use that to play 64 online together. And he was just this crazy 64 player. I got one of those USB to 64 adapters, and I was playing online a little bit, but I was playing with him because if I wanted to play Smash Brothers, it was 64 or nothing. I tried to get him to play Melee like several times and just wasn't having it. I was like, all right, I guess I'm a 64 player now.
You're sitting across from someone who you're going, please become my Isaiah. No shot.
He was really good. And I got really good. I went to a Smash 64 local here recently in Georgia. I got third place, I want to say. It was like maybe like 10 or 12 entrants, but
Hey, still top eight. Yeah,
I still got it.
Yeah, you're playing all these Kirby players and showing them what's up.
Yeah, I urge anyone, if they're looking for another like itch to the Smash like bug, like to check out 64. It's a lot of fun.
And Smash Remix. Yes, I love that as well.
Yes, Smash Remix as well. I've gotten a chance to play that as well. Smash Remix is a lot of fun as well.
So it's fun to hear about when Brawl comes out, because I like that there's a genuine Smash Dojo's checking that every day. I did that. I was excited. I thought it was going to be the best game ever. And I play it, and there are a lot of parts of it that I like, but I could tell playing it, if I entered into tournaments playing this game, I would just not have really any fun. I would be annoyed at the things that I feel like I want to do, but I can't do. And so that's one of the things that people talk about no matter what Smash game comes out. We don't have to talk about when Smash 4 Ultimate came out, because ultimately, because in the end, you go back to Melee because it is an amazing feeling game. I don't always treat Mango's words like the gospel, but when you hear him talking about how there's always going to be a space for Melee within the gaming sphere because of how the game feels when you play it, that yes, it feels a little foreign at first when you're used to having a high amount of buffer, or if you're new to platform fighters, if you're new to fighting games in general, like if you come from first person shooter or whatever, that you have to adjust to it. But when you do, when you hit that pillar combo for the first time, or when you hit a couple down smashes in a row, or a DK charge punch nowadays, because there are so many people playing the monkey that you feel, ooh, this game's fun, and then you kind of get hooked a little bit.
It's, oh man, you went over a lot just there. So first sidebar, Smash Dojo was lit. That website was awesome. I was staying up until 2-3 o'clock in the morning every single night to get those Smash Dojo updates. I remember waking my friend up when they announced Sonic.
No way. You call the house or like knock on the door like, wake up.
No, I was in my dorm room and I just called their cell phone. And I was like, no, dog. You gotta get out of bed, go to your computer, because like smartphones weren't really like
right. You're calling on a flip phone, you know.
Yeah. Go to your computer, check the shit out. Smash Dojo was great. The other things that you were talking about, I think if you were to take Brawl seriously, so Brawl also happened in like a not like great time in my life, so I try not to like I try not to dunk on Brawl more than it deserves, right? Because I do have an appreciation for the people that still like the game and still like want to play it, and I've heard that they feel like a lot of times they were not given a fair shake from like the Melee community or like the Smash community at large, because like they look down on their game, and I hate that. But I also do think that there were, to your point, some very core fundamental issues that were just, Brawl was close to being a cool game, right? The thing is that the cool parts of Brawl took like a few years to like really like figure out, where I think the cool parts of Melee, like as soon as people like started getting into the lab and like started figuring stuff out, everything was like super snappy, like super cool, like super responsive, right? And then Brawl is like, it's a different flavor of skill and, you know, technical involvement, right? But really bad imbalance issues and tripping are like a huge thing to get past. Tripping especially tough. Tripping is like the more I look back on it, the more it's like, man, what were they cooking?
There seems to be a very deliberate thesis statement of, we're going to make a game that is not like Melee. We're going to use Melee as a board of, does it remind you of Melee? Well, don't do that then. Take it out. That seems like there's a poster on every developer's cubicle wall of, oh, does this remind you of Melee? Then you can't do that then. And I think because, and I underrated this as a youngin' and even until recently, but you know, all those Sakurai videos that he's putting out on his YouTube channel talked about needing the game to be playable on a sideways Wii remote, and I go, That's right. There were people who didn't have nunchucks, who didn't have GameCube controllers. You
Yeah.
needed them to be able to play it without any of those things. So how could you play? Imagine playing Melee on a Wii remote. That's all I have to say. Like, imagine having
Yeah.
only like what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 angles like,
Yeah.
for your box
Yeah,
LD.
it's definitely, there are a lot of considerations, and that's something that I really do appreciate about Sakurai's YouTube channel is the some of the appreciation for things in game development that you don't necessarily get, like when you're just like in the thick of it, right? Just like trying to get something from a game, and you don't know like what the developers are having to do in the back end to make things like happen. And I really appreciate that. I did have a tweet about that though recently. I was like, you ever think about how Brawl was a love letter to video games and a hate letter to Melee players?
I love that. It's a great way to summarize it because in many ways
Yeah,
it is fun to play. It's just hard to play competitively. But you're right. Shout outs to Chia, who got screwed over once again, maybe unintentionally, but it sounded a little intentional by the Supernova staff. I don't like criticizing TOs directly because I've talked to enough of them and I know they have a lot of things going on.
they're
But
doing
when
the
it comes
Lord's work,
to
but
like
continue.
saying these are the things we're going to try to do in advance of the event, we're going to communicate what the expectation for the schedule is, blah blah blah. We'll be able to do this for your game, and Brawl is in the Smash franchise. We're not talking about icing out Project Plus, even though I love Project Plus for existing, first of all. But anyway, this is an official Smash game. Brawl is an official Smash game, and I think it belongs just like the combo contest, just like the other Smash games at an event like Supernova. That's the whole point. So
Yeah,
when something like that happens and I read Chia's thread, I'm just like, ah. But the majority of people who follow Smash in some shape or form, for Brawl, for Smash 4, and for 64, those are just the three that just like they just kind of fall behind. They have a smaller fan base that sticks with those games. I would say it's not necessarily there. You have room for it in your heart if you want to make room for it in your heart. I can follow the NFL and also follow Melee. I'll watch top 8 sometimes in favor of
yeah.
watching a football game, but then sometimes I'm watching the football game because for whatever reason the top 8, whoever's left in the top 8, I'm just like, I'll catch up on it
I'm
later.
not feeling it, and it's like, yeah, I feel you. It's like, listen, there's a lot of interest and nuance I could talk about with a lot of matchups. But sometimes I don't want to see a Jigglypuff Ditto. I need something a little bit more fast paced. Even though I have a lot of appreciation, I play Peach, right? I play one of those floaty characters, right? So I get a little upset when people think that like Peach Puff or like Peach Samus or like boring matchups or whatever. There's a lot going on, right? And a lot of people just think that the players are like slow or campy or whatever when it's just like two two sturdy characters that are difficult to kill. And it could be a 6 minute match where both players are constantly approaching each other. Um, so to the larger point, I think that the audience, I don't know, there's a lot more eyeballs on Melee and Smash these days. I think within the like more involved community, I think that there is a much better appreciation of all the different like sides of the community, right? Like I think that I do think that there was a lot of like what Brawl players were talking about where Melee players were being like not like very kind to them just because they were playing like what they perceived to be an inferior game. So I think that type of vibe has left the community mostly. I think most people are like, oh, all the Smash games are kind of cool in their own right. Ultimate players get to complain about Bayonetta from Smash 4. Like I think that's their birthright if they have to deal with that character, right? Just
Sure.
like even though I think Melee is a beautiful game, I will talk for hours about how BS unfair Fox McCloud is because he is. But Melee is still great, and I still love it despite its flaws.
Yes, there are fun little isms about Melee that we could spend a long time talking about and complaining about. To draw it to a close, the last thing I'll say about Brawl or any Smash game is that it doesn't matter which one you pick to come after Melee, it was probably going to fracture the community in some way. But maybe, perhaps, it is for the best that it happened before social media had really, truly emerged. Like, Facebook was around back then, and I think
Yes.
maybe one or two other places, but Twitter was a baby at that point. Nobody was really on Twitter yet. I mean, most of the Smash, most of Melee did not get involved until Evo 2013. A lot of, if you look at a lot of the OGs, a lot of them have a 2013 join date. I mean, some of them have earlier, but you know, like, anyway, the I'm glad that it happened back then, ultimately, as compared to happening in a nowadays sense, because in a nowadays sense, I could not imagine having a Smash game follow up Melee nowadays. It would be very hard to get onto the internet. Let's just put it that way.
I think it's interesting because I think Brawl had to be uniquely, maybe not bad, but uniquely different enough from it. If Brawl were just like a slightly like worse Melee, nobody would be playing Melee. Everybody would have gone over to Brawl. Like, it would be like that niche, like it would be like a Street Fighter 4 player today, right? Where people love Street Fighter 4, people have a lot of fond memories of Street Fighter 4, but there's not like a really like a super large community for Street Fighter 4, right? Which is incidentally like one of like my first like traditional fighting games that I played was Street Fighter 4. But if Brawl had been mostly like Melee, but just like a little bit different, like a little bit like slower, like, you know, a little bit like less combos, I don't think Melee would. I don't think Melee would be alive like it is today. I don't think that. I think it had to be that like much of like a break, right? To your point, I think that chasm had to be that large between the two games for it to happen like it did. And for better or for worse, it's where we are, and it's how Melee exists today. So I can't complain.
Yes, I am glad that Melee is still around. To be fair, I think Melee's around in some capacity, but like you said, it would have a smaller community, kind of like, I mean, maybe right now they'd be discovering ASCI down, like right now. And they come out forward and be like, I know y'all are playing a game that's like kind of cool, but it doesn't have ASCI down. I checked.
UCF would not be around yet if it weren't like that. We'd still be trying to figure out the hardware.
Yeah, none. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Oh my gosh. Speaking of none, I watched your Function 3 back in 2018 winter semis versus the No Knee himself. You remember playing that set at all?
I sure do.
I watched it today, and I wanted to ask you your about some of the things that I heard on the commentary. It's fun. When the commentary actually knows who you are and can talk about little isms that come up. Yeah. I watched a set of you playing offline Melee from almost a year ago, and the commentary wasn't even working, so I was just watching you play versus Taza in winter semis and in grand finals going, oh yeah, there's not a lot of commentary. I'm not really getting a lot of nuggets, but this is very tense. I am very interested to see who wins. But let's talk about the Nun set first. What do you remember about that day? What do you remember about, because you had teams? Had you already played doubles with Nun at this point in the day?
Yeah. So Nun and I had already played doubles. He had been staying with me for a while at that point. So that year, 2017, Nun actually came over to stay with me like 2 or 3 times, and he stayed for like a week at a time. So one of them was for that trip. It was Function 3, and then I think DreamHack Atlanta was right after that. And then prior to that, he had come out for something else. I can't remember. He had been over to my place a couple of times though, and during that trip, he had been over for like already like a week. And cool dude. I love Nun. We got to hang out at Tipped Off this past year. We still get to chat from time to time. That set was the first, maybe only like real high profile win I had post like Melee popping off, right? There were a couple of older sets, some sets that weren't recorded after like Melee took off in 2013, that were just as good as that. But that was the like first time where it was like, good high production value stream. It was more modern Melee, right? Because this was like right when did like UCF start becoming common? Like
maybe around that time, and they were talking about ASDI down being a thing. One of the commentators said, "Gentlemen won't work anymore someday when you can just ASDI down and get out a counter hit. It won't work anymore," which is a fun thing. I mean, I won't dispute that the jab is not the best thing ever for Falcon, but you need something. You can't. The jump squat's too slow. All the aerials come out a bit too slow. You need a get off me tool, and the jab, the gentleman, still works. I'm pleased to announce in 2024.
I think sidebar to that, maybe that's something we could talk about a little bit later. But defensive options in melee have really improved greatly, and I think that's like one of like the very like big like core advancements in melee meta that has made it so impressive and like high level today. Is I think defensive options in general. But to go back to that set, I had other big wins like back in the day, right? Like, up until that moment, like for like on a personal level, I would say like my best accomplishment was at a tournament that was literally called the greatest melee tournament since Brawl came out. And I want there to be a full length documentary on this tournament because it deserves it. I think one of the great like misses of the Smash documentary and the way people talk about Smash in general is leaving out this particular tournament, because usually what people talk about is that Pound 3 happens, we get those Jigglypuff Dittos with freaking Mewtwo King and Mango, and I was at that tournament. That was at that tournament, that was actually, I didn't beat anyone specifically, but that was my best placing tournament ever. I got 25th. I made it to the top 32 bracket of Pound 3, and that was like my biggest accomplishment for the longest time.
Sorry, just head bobbing a little bit like he's spitting. Please continue.
So Pound 3 happens, and then microphone. People just skip to ROM, Revival of Melee, after that. Right? Like, it's basically like, they're like, oh, like, Pound 3 happens, Brawl's released,
nothing happened. No events.
Melee. And it's like, now, granted, I love, like, what the ROM series did for Melee as well, right? And obviously, it played a huge part in reviving Melee, right? But there's a tournament. You can look it up. There's a Smashboards thread that's still up there. Ooh. I was reading through it. But the greatest Melee tournament since Brawl came out, and it was, I want to say, like the June or July after Brawl came out. So Brawl hadn't even been out for like 6 months, and they host this Melee tournament, and it had over 100 entrants, and it had Mewtwo King. It was Hungrybox's first out-of-state tournament. It was Chudat was there, Cactuar, another like really good top player. Phil, Phil, the commentator, yep. Phil used to come out to a bunch of those tournaments. He was one of the few West Coast people that came out to a bunch of events. I love Phil. All these like top players, and it was Hungrybox got 5th place. It was like his first like out of state like major event, and he placed in the top 8. I want to say Chudat won. Maybe Mewtwo King and Chudat split. There's a lot of pot splitting back then too.
Please continue.
But that tournament was incredible, and it was genuinely the first like big Melee tournament like since Brawl had come out that showed that there was still a lot of passion for the game, and that people were willing to travel and like go to this event, that the Melee community was alive and well, right? I think ROM like firmly established it, but the spark that I think started it was this tournament. It was here in Georgia. Really awesome event. That tournament, I had a crazy run in pools where I went 14-0 in my second round of pools, including a 2-0 over Chudat and Hungrybox. So that was my best run for a minute. And then the Nunset happened, and they're streaming. There's way more eyeballs on it. I had absolutely no expectation of doing well that set. As a matter of fact, I had just quit my job like 2 weeks prior. So I was it was a pretty tumultuous time in my life, right? Which I think might have helped me. I think the fact that my brain was so preoccupied with a bunch of other like stuff in my life, that all of like the anxiety and the ego and the tension that you get when you enter a Melee bracket wasn't really there, right? And I just played out of my mind. I don't know. It was good. It felt good. My phone was blowing up. I was getting a bunch of DMs. I went back and watched the Twitch chat for it, and everyone was kind of crazy. I love the juxtaposition, because it still happens today, where I'll be like on stream and I'll be doing like relatively well. Like it'll happen like what was it during tipped off? I had my teams run with Hungry Box, right? And it's always one of two like responses. It's like, who the fuck is this random ass Peach? Why is he like doing well? Like back then, it's like, why is this random Peach beating none, right? And then like some dude from GameFAQs like 15, 20 years prior is like, yo, XIF, that's my goat. And nothing in between. Nothing, no like, oh, I think I might have heard this guy before. It is either they have never heard of me in their life or they know precisely who I am.
Oh yeah, we go way back. Was at Zip's house, the best thing ever. I love that tweet that you had from. Well, no, I can't go that far yet. I wanted to ask you about playing in a set where it goes game 5. You're distinctly aware that even though the other games matter, of course, when you're in a game 5 with top player boy type situations, where does your mind go to? Like, and I feel like this is a great question, so I have to shout myself out for it. But the reason why I feel like this matters is because this is where we were talking about mind games earlier. Love mind games, but when you when you're in melee, it's a little bit harder because you want to focus on your punish being good, your edge guard being good. You want to focus on your defense if you remember to think about that, and the good players do, of course. But something that happens in a game 5 is that sometimes the spaghetti melee comes out, or you're thinking too much about what's going to happen after the result of the set happens, especially if it happens in my favor. Like, all those things creep up on you. Like, you have to start like batting them away. Like, and for me, when I have never been in a game 5 versus a top player, so remove that from your mind. I am curious on your perspective on what goes through your mind when you're in game 5 in a set like that.
So it's interesting because this is something that I always try to explain to people, and I'm glad you asked this question because this is something that I actually I think about, right? I think about quite a lot. Where why is it that I can't seem to put it together? I'm doing great, I'm unranked, or I'm playing a bunch of friendlies and I'm playing out of my mind, but like I can't ever do any better than like 2-2 when I go to my local, right? And it's just that it's kind of precisely that you have to keep entering bracket, you have to keep going in person, you have to keep playing under those specific circumstances. And I think to that point, that's set against none, the thing that I am probably most proud of, other than the pop off, because I thought my pop off was amazing, but
that was fun. Yes.
It was the respectful pop off.
Yes.
That's why I liked it.
But like the shine in your eyes, you know what I mean? Like, you can see it.
No, the thing that I was really proud about was more than the fact that I beat none. It was the fact that I beat none in a game 5 last stock situation against a player that's known for being relatively clutch, right? Maybe not clutch box levels, but none has a reputation of doing really well in high pressure situations, right?
Yes.
And I managed to win in that. But the reason why, like, when I get to those situations, I have so much experience with it because I've been playing for so long, and I've been playing at a high level. Later on into bracket, it's I haven't won a lot of tournaments. I've won a few locals here and there, but I've been in grand finals plenty of times at like larger events like regionals. I've been in top 8 a bunch. I have the experience, and I have the practice in playing specifically in those situations. And there's this awesome Wired video, I think, talking about sports psychology and free throw shooting, about how someone can be really, really good at free throw shooting in practice, and then their percentages tank when they're on the court in an actual NBA game, right? They say that famously Shaq said that he would shoot over 85% from the free throw line in practice, but it was like barely 60% like in game, right? For his career. And it's practicing those free throw shots when you've got a whole crowd of people, stadium of people cheering you on. It's loud. You've got, the pressure's on. It's a game time situation, blah, blah, blah. I think I do well in those situations because I have so much practice in those situations. I practice a lot in a situation where I am nervous, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I want to cry. I still feel all of those things. Like I still feel all the anxiety and the pressure, but I have so much experience playing in those circumstances that I feel like I play just as good, if not better, when the pressure is on like that. And it's because I have just such a large amount of experience. And in general, for me personally, as a player, I kind of feed off the vibes, right? I don't like wearing headphones. I don't like just hearing I need the ambiance. I need the crowd noise. I need people like roaring. Like I need the hype. Like I need that energy. I feed off of it. I do really well. Even if they're not cheering for me. Even if they're not cheering for me. I haven't been in a lot of situations where I've been like heckled or anything like that, but I I need the sounds. I need the sounds of Melee, and it's more than just what comes from the game.
Right, the sounds of the people playing the game.
Yeah. I need all of it, and I feed off of it. And for me, like when I'm in that situation, I guess to like definitively answer your question, like what am I thinking, what am I doing? I lock in. Like I'm just yep. Like I kind of like take stock of myself. I'm like yep. Like my heart rate's going crazy. Like I'm like kind of like shaking a little bit. I'm definitely like super fucking nervous. It's time to play some Melee. And I just concentrate on my execution as best as I can and just try not to throw the game. I guess the best way I could describe it.
Play mistake free, yes. And you've played more than enough Melee to know that sometimes it's not necessarily about who's got the best tech skill. It's just who just doesn't die at inopportune times. Like, don't die below 40%, please.
I have a confession. There are like I see it so often, like where somebody like SDs their stock, right? And there's like you can see like the disappointments, like, oh man, I wish that didn't happen, blah blah. They're playing me. We take those. We take those every day.
Yes, we do.
Every day we take those. Melee is a tough game. I'm also an ardent believer that there are much fewer unforced errors in Melee than people give credit for. I think a lot of those like SDs that people find unfortunate is because they were pressured into a situation that caused them to flub their tech like that. I think
Of course. No, that wouldn't happen in friendlies. They would tell you, this doesn't really happen to me in friendlies.
No, listen. I've never seen One Piece in my life, but I have to imagine it's the Emperor's Hockey from context clues. It's got to be the Emperor's Hockey, right? He's just that aura.
Why is he so sick with it?
I have to throw myself off the stage. I have to air dodge off. There's no other recourse. I have to throw myself out of here. He's too much.
Yes, and you play a character that's a little bit less susceptible to that sort of thing happening to you, right? But I was watching the set that you had. This was 10 months ago, but maybe you remember playing against Taza. I had briefly mentioned that. I watched the winter semi set. I was the fourth viewer of that particular video. Very proud fourth viewer. I think people who want to do their research should really not just watch grand finals. Winter semis, your first match, gives a lot of context as to what happens in grands. It's a game 5 winter semis. There's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of momentum swings, but you clutch it out, right? In grands, there was an immediate right away. I could tell someone, or maybe Taza, just was like self-dialogue, inner dialogue. This is what I need to do different. If I make it back to grands, I need a little bit of different game plan. I need some adaptations. You could tell right away things had changed. And I was interested to see how you would adapt. And it didn't happen right away in the first set, which Taza took, but it did happen in the second set, went game 5. And now that I've built it up enough, you can leave this now, oh viewer, oh listener, if you want to see it for yourselves. It's a great set. It just doesn't end well for our hero today. Yes. What do you remember about the tournament experience at what's the name of the something house? Hold on, I have it in my notes. Oh,
I mean, I could let you say
House
it. Right?
Number 56. What do you remember about Kame House 56 and playing Taza in
House, like Kame House, like from Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, Kame. Well, see, guess who hasn't watched Dragon Ball Z? This guy. Please continue.
Oh, dang. That needs to be fixed. That's people people will say what they want about, you know, how simple or whatever Dragon Ball Z is.
I will
It's still a
say
great
that.
show. There's a reason why it's popular.
Okay.
Okay. So that tournament, that was an interesting one because, like, at surface, like at like face value, it's like, damn, I lost to a DK. And that doesn't feel great. It's not a good look either. Even though we're like in the midst of a DK renaissance, you don't want to be the person to be at the losing end of the DK stomp, right? So there it was. And then, mind you, that local was on a Monday night right after a Sunday local in Georgia. So I want to say it was one of the monthlies that we were doing. We're like flying out some players. Like one month we had Red, you know, the MDVA Fox.
Yeah.
Another month we had Zamu come out here.
Desku.
You know, she's an amazing fox. So it was after one of those events. So I'd already done a melee tournament the day prior, right? And then I go to work, and straight from work I go melee local, right? And it's on a Monday, and I find myself fighting against this DK player. I didn't even think I was gonna have to fight them. Like mentally, I wasn't preparing for DK in Grands. I thought Taza was going to lose to, gosh, who was it? It wasn't Nate Bugg. It was Erica Bonchico, I think. I can't remember. But Taza ended up winning that set, and I was like, oh, now I have to fight Taza, right? I wasn't like super prepared for it. And obviously, like I lost that first set. And to your point, I actually, even though it doesn't look good at face value, that was one of the, it's the most proud of I've been of a loss in a long time, because like there are a lot of instances where you lose that first set and you just give up. It's like, what am I even doing here, right? You know, I've already lost all the momentum. You get like 3-0 and a handshake on the second set, right? And not to mention that I was not doing well in that first set either. Like, even though I ended up losing that first set, you know, I brought it to game 5 during that. It was like 15 games of freaking Peach Donkey Kong that I played that night, right? But I kept it really close. I put it to game 5. It was still really close during that game 5. And even though I didn't win, I remember the immediate aftermath. I was not happy. I was like, dog, it's like 11:30 at night. I've got work tomorrow. What the fuck am I doing fighting against a Donkey Kong right now on a freaking work night? Like, I was like, it was one of those moments where it's like, you know, like the Stu Pickles meme. It's like, Stu, why are you making pudding at 2 o'clock in the morning? It's like, because I've lost control of my life. That's how I felt fighting against Donkey Kong. It's like almost midnight. I'm going game 15 with Donkey Kong. It's like, I've lost control of my life. Oh my god, it was so miserable. But
and yet, sorry, go ahead.
And yet, Tasa's a really great player. Has got a bunch of coaching from Junebug. And then also we got an opportunity to do a block of commentary together at Ohan's birthday bash on Zane's stream, and that went really, really well. I don't know if you know this. Taza is one of the professional commentators for Brawlhalla. He's like, you know, paid by Ubisoft. Like, he has been doing professional commentary for 10 plus years and is just now like trying to make a come up in Melee and whatnot. Really,
that's interesting.
Player, really
that's interesting.
guy. Yeah, no, Tazo's one that I would definitely put on your radar. Really cool guy. And we've had a bunch of great conversations. At that moment, like, you know, I wasn't angry at him. I was just like, man, I lost to a monkey. But looking back on it, I was happy that I didn't just like throw in the towel like after like things got like a little bit bad, that I still fought back to a game 10 grand finals. I didn't make it, but I just definitely something I've gotten better at. You know, when it's really like high intensity, like the Nun match, I've always been pretty good. But when it's like low energy demoralizing situation, like you're down in a set against a Donkey Kong, I usually lose that kind of momentum, and I've done a lot better with that, and that felt pretty good. And that was honestly, that might be like the most recent like recorded singles match that I have online, huh? Now that I'm thinking about it.
Offline match that has been uploaded online. So we have to be careful because I do want to talk to you about your perspective on when Slippy came out, but I wanted to ask you about this set because we were talking about your Nun set. Yes, where there's a game 5 victory, and then this one where there was game 5 loss. I just want to say in the grand finals reset, when you were taken to Yoshi's. I thought you were going to lose that on that stage again because you had not beaten Taza in any of the games thus far on Yoshi's, leading up to the Grand Finals reset game on Yoshi's. Because, especially in the first set of Grands, you just kept falling for landing on the platform with a down air, and Taza would just do up B on the ground beneath the platform, and that just caught you off guard every time. And I was really hoping that you would start to notice that more and more, and you did, but it was on that stage in particular where I felt like, I mean, you fell for it a few times still, who's not going to do that? But a lot more, you started to understand, wait a minute, don't just land on the platform with the down air, be ready for the arm to come out from underneath the platform when he's on the ground. And you won that game, XIF. I was like super stoked. I did not know who was going to win, but I thought after you took the Yoshi story game, I thought your chances of winning that set, the Grand Finals reset, was a lot higher because you that's almost like winning a set within itself. When you go to a stage where you're like, oh, but you win, it's like, oh, we're so back, let's go.
I appreciate it. I know it's like, it's annoying for me as a player because I know about that up B hitbox. Like, even going into that set, like, I knew about that, like, shenanigan, right? It's just, you never know exactly when people are going to be willing to let it rip or, like, how they use it in their neutral, right?
It's true, it's true.
I'm already a very aggressive player, so I'm already trying to push the envelope. So I'm going to get hit by some stupid stuff frequently. It's just how I play. Probably why I do well with Peach, because I can get away with those wars of attrition, right?
But you were not able to quite not to big picture it, to take away the entire set. It is, however, like a little sign of growth, if you will, from, because I find it really hard to change my habits within a set. The top players, they will be able to change their habits from game to game within a set pretty well, even against other top players, but it doesn't happen right away. They'll fall for the same thing one or two times before starting to catch on, especially if they're nervous against going, oh, I'm a top 10 player versus going against a top 5 player, or I'm a top 25 player going against a top 15 player. They deal with nerves too. But but you showed that to me. I saw that. Me and 400 other viewers in the Grand Finals match, I was very impressed when you came away with that Yoshi story win. I was rooting for you, obviously, because I knew I was interviewing you. But it was cool to see that particular win. That was my favorite game from the winter semis and the and the all of Grand Finals and Grand Finals reset. But this is post. Yes, you might not have seen the Wustoons documentaries of the monkey leading up to that set. Perhaps not. Perhaps you don't watch every single piece of Smash content. I know that I do not, but you know, the Turn Down for Waltz of the world and the Awesome Sauces of the world, great stuff on the internet. But you have been around for a lot of content. So before I ask you about Slippy, we'll save that for the next topic. What has been content, or a content creator, and they weren't called content creators back in the day, they were called YouTubers back in the day, and before that you were just a person making videos, but who's someone that you can think of as it pertains to Smash content that you remember watching and going, this is my jam?
Oh man, that's kind of interesting. So I should preface this by saying that I did not start watching a lot of modern Melee content until the past like year or so. And it was, I'm not sure if anyone else can understand this. I think only people that have been around since the early days, like I have, might be able to understand what I'm talking about. But it was always a little awkward for me to see my childhood mythologized the way that it was with Melee, like in the Smash documentary. I didn't watch the Smash documentary until like maybe like 2019, like right before the pandemic. It was years before I watched the Smash documentary, and I'm in it for a few seconds, but I'm in it. It was just, it was not just like the way people started treating the Melee community, but it was like the way people were treating like the people and the personalities of the scene. Kind of, there's a lot of this like parasocial dynamic. It was like kind of awkward. It was weird. I didn't like seeing like a third party like scrutinize like all the like hobbies and like shit I did when I was a kid. just it was a little weird for me. I've mostly gotten over it. I've been past it now. It just wasn't something that I enjoyed watching, but I have been watching a lot of modern melee content recently, and to your point, people like Awesome Sauce and Turn Down for Wall, I think that they're great. Especially Wall. I've been watching some of their stuff more recently, and I think they've got.
I got to turn down for Walt shirt. Please continue. Sorry.
Nice. I got to meet him at Tipped Off. That was another person I got to chat with for a little bit, and he was awesome to talk with as well. From back then, so we talked about this earlier. There is the video of husband throwing Florida into the Atlantic Ocean, talking trash for MLG Orlando. Team Ben, and specifically Bach was his tag from Team Ben, that used to do a lot of the early video footage for Melee. I think I have a lot of appreciation for the very, very early content creation for Melee. The very, very earliest combo videos like Shine Blind and like Hylian Nightmare, and then the very early like content Melee videos like Team Ben did, where they would showcase their trip to an event, have them like talk with the camera, show some gameplay, and the whole thing, right? It wasn't just, it was like a proto vlog, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of appreciation for the content coming from that era, because it was so much more difficult and it's so much more precious to have video or even photo footage of any of these events from back then, right? And a lot of this stuff was before even YouTube, right? So these people are like creating these videos, and you have to find like some hosting site so that they can download it onto their computer at like 15 kilobytes per second to watch on Windows Movie Player. This guy talk shit about Melee for 4.5 minutes.
And some of it did end up being put onto YouTube. There's a couple of videos that Pew Pew You put me onto for Genesis, where he said there was a Genesis bus, and I go, "Oh, word!" He was like, "Yeah, there's a video on YouTube. Go look it up." And it's just like like a few minutes, if I recall correctly, of what it was like being in the Melee bus going to Genesis 1, and I'm like, this is awesome. I wish I was in this bus. Like the videos that make you go, I wish I was there, because the documentary is telling a story, and like you said, it's being turned into almost like fan fiction of what had happened. Almost. It's really weird when you watch a documentary after watching the Smash documentary. You start to realize that they're all just kind of like that. You're being presented things that happen, but through a storytelling lens and dramatization and a little bit of fan fiction, except maybe not as good as the Kylo Ren and Rey fan fiction that I've read. So it's just like, it's tough. I
don't fault people like Samox. I think Samox did a great job of the documentary. Like, having watched the documentary, I thought it was well done. I thought it presented a lot of the stuff well. I know some people have some criticisms for how the documentary portrayed some facts, but I thought that it got the vibe and the essence of the time for the most part right. Maybe for someone like me, a few glaring omissions like that event I was talking about, Greatest Melee Tournament since Brawl came out. But having talked to some people about that, to your point, I think a big reason is that, some of the events that, might have, like from a historical context, maybe belonged in the story as like part of the story, that if there's not a lot of documentation, if there's not a lot of video, if there's not a lot of like photos of the event and whatnot, it's really, really hard to be able to tell a story with so little resources, right? So that stuff ends up on the cutting room floor because you just don't have the broader context of resources to be able to tell a proper story to the audience. And I get that.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell the Isaiah and Ken story at oh boy, and now I'm forgetting the name of the set, but there's a lot of anime pictures during that particular segment, because thankfully we have grand finals, but we don't really have anything else, so you kind of have to do a lot. And Isaiah didn't want to be filmed for the interview, so you can't see him like talking, and so you're just a lot of Ken talking and then anime pictures. And that would happen if it were by the way, this thread, there's supposedly a lot of pictures that were uploaded, and they're all saying, sorry, image is currently unavailable, and I'm going, no, lost media.
There's a lot of instances like that, like Imgur or like those other hosting websites where it was like, oh, if you want to like post a picture to a forum, you can upload it to this website, and then you'll have it, but no, a lot of that stuff is gone.
The most 3. That's the tournament that Isaiah legendarily beat Ken. Anyway.
Yeah, it was 2005, I think. I was in Melee at the time. I remember. I'm like only slightly joking. Huge believer in Isaiah if he tried.
Well, we know what that's like. Don't you remember watching Isaiah tear through everybody at Smash 64 from SmashCon last year?
That's true. Isaiah still got it. Don't ever
Almost
sleep on
40-year-old man holding up the 30-somethings of the world. I mean, I'm not 30-something yet, but I'm obviously looking at you. There's other people in Smash who are at that bracket. I mean, Mango, for crying out loud, is 32 or whatever. Just holding it down for the 30-somethings. It was so cool to follow the top 8 of Smash 64 from last year. Not quite. I mean, it was still good. It's tough when Isaiah's not there.
Supernova.
To defend his title at Supernova, I would have loved to see Isaiah go back, but maybe in another. I waited a long time to watch an Isaiah victory. Like when I'm actually like watching the stream, I waited a long time for that because I would either hear about it afterwards and be like, "Oh, I'm a dummy," and I didn't go to events for a very, very long time. And I still don't go to a lot of majors. I should theoretically go to stuff that's close, like Collision or what have you, that's close to PA, but
yeah,
I'm kind of waiting for our Philadelphia events to pop off because I'm 90 minutes from Philly, and No John's 4, for those of you who are interested, you should check that out. It's a 2-day event now in November, but that's neither here nor there. Please continue.
Yeah, I was no, you're talking about it just reminded me of like going to out of state events, right? Because for me, I started doing I started going to locals in 2004. I've been playing Melee at a high level, we'll say it, for at least like a year prior, because I was doing break the target stuff for a long time before then, so I had to do like L canceling, wave dashing, all that stuff, right? And I traveled relatively consistently up until 2010, I want to say. There weren't a lot of events in like 2008, 2009, obviously, right?
Sure, yeah.
But I went to Melee FC3 very early on, and then as a Peach main, when I was like actually like placing well, I did Pound 2, I did Pound 3, I did Melee FCD, and in
FC Diamond, for those who don't know.
Yeah, Melee
People forget.
FC Diamond.
Your favorite TO's favorite TO was at FC Diamond,
The kisses are great. I love the kisses. The kisses always have a good event to throw. I really appreciate. And also after Melee FCD, what was it? We crashed at Kish Prime's house the night after. We had like a 20-hour drive going from South Bend, Indiana down to Miami, Florida. So as you can imagine.
Bet you wish you were living in Georgia at the time. Ah, well.
Well, the nice part is that I got to stay at my dad's house. My dad was living in Georgia, and he let us stay a night to break up the drive one of those nights. So that did help a lot.
Yeah, because Florida is north-south big.
Halfway. It was 10 hours from Indiana to Georgia, and then 10 hours just to go from Georgia to Florida.
Right. Yeah.
But I went to, in 2010, I went to Pound 5. For people that don't remember exactly Pound 5, that was when PP beat Armada in Grand Finals.
Oh, that's right, because I was about to say Pound 4 was that's disrespectful, Mango. That's disrespectful to Huggerbox, to everyone, to me.
4. I did go to Pound 5, though, and I was at that tournament. Sidebar, it was me and a friend of mine that started us singing the Pokemon theme song during those Grand Finals.
Wow.
If you go back and watch that VOD, I was patient 0 for that. Fun fact for the audience.
So it's not clapping the Dreamland, it's singing the Pokemon theme.
Oh, people were so mad about it too. They're like, y'all are so cringe, or whatever the equivalent of cringe was back then, because I don't even think cringe was like part of our general lexicon back then.
It's probably something that would have to be redacted now.
Unfortunately, yeah, probably. But no, I went to Pound 5. That was in 2010. The next out-of-state tournament I went to wasn't until 2016. So there was a 6-year period where I didn't go anywhere aside from Georgia. But Tipped Off always happened every year in Georgia anyway, right? And so that was like always my brief, contact with the outside Melee world, right? So, during that era was when I got second at Tipped Off 7. That was the grand finals I had against Dr. Peepee when we went Mushroom Kingdom 2. That was fun.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Um, during that time, I also had a set win in top 8 over Plup at Tipped Off 9.
No
I beat
biggie.
Plup. Yeah, no biggie. That was like it was against his Samus. It was like a few months before he made the switch over to Sheik. Like he made the switch over to Sheik like less than a year after that.
Ah,
But
well,
actually,
some would say, there's a
hey, listen,
track it back.
a lifetime undefeated versus Plup. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, that too. But hey, the switch did not happen until after Plup lost to Ziff. That's what the people have been saying.
That's true. And then Tipped Off 10, I want to say, is when I had a set win over Wobbles. So even though I wasn't like traveling out of state, we still had a bunch of people like come into Georgia, and I still like was involved with the scene. I was still playing a lot like locally, and I still like had like a few good wins during that era, right? But it wasn't until 2016 that I started going back to tournaments, and that was when Hungry Box ended up moving to Georgia for I don't know. I guess this kind of became like a meme when I was doing commentary during Tipped Off. But in 2016, HBox graduated from his engineering degree, and he was doing some rotational with a company. I can't remember the name of it. But the first leg of the rotation was here in Georgia, and he moved in with me, and we were roommates for about 6 months. He was in that room right over there.
How about that?
Yeah. And it was just kind of like a serendipitous thing. Like it wasn't like I didn't know HBox well. I'm sorry.
Can I ask you, is there residual pop-off energy that's just left in that room where you walk in and you find yourself going like, why am I like building up for a pop-off right now? Sorry, that's just, I let the intrusive thoughts win. I'm sorry. I know that's not true.
Not quite, but there's definitely some funny story. The really funny part was that there was a de facto trophy room dedicated for him because I had a spare bedroom, and during that time in 2016, he moved in Super Bowl Sunday of 2016. So it was like the first weekend of February. And he was here until September or something like that, right? He won so many events during that.
Oh
during
my
that
gosh,
time.
that's the year for Hungry Box.
Yeah, 2016 was the year, and that's the Ziff difference, baby.
Oh, that's the Ziff difference. Have we seen a return to form?
It is no, it was a great time. So during that era already, like back in 2015, I was having the Smash Fest over at my house, and there were so many people local to me, and this was before like NetPlay was like any good and way before Slippy, right? So I was having like 20, 30 people over at my house every Wednesday night, right? And then HBox moves in, and now everybody wants to come over. So now I've got like 40 plus people at my house every single Wednesday night, like playing Melee. He was like, the dude was surrounded by Melee, like at all times. And we had good practice here. There's a really, really cracked Captain Falcon player, RJ, that's local to here, who was cooking Hungry Box for a minute before HBox made the run at EVO. Because that was also the year that he won EVO. He was living here when
Right. Mm-hmm. EVO 2016, that's still like a top 5 grand finals of all time.
Oh yeah, for me, like that is probably the best set of Melee that I've ever watched. But that's like that's personal for me, right? Because that was like my friend bringing home the trophy, right?
Yeah.
He came home after EVO, and I asked him about like the payouts, right? Like because I was kind of curious because there's always been a history of like some events like take like a long time to pay out their players, right?
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Anyway,
so I asked him, I was like, so like when you get paid out, and he's like, dude, I've got the check in my car right now. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, yeah, during like the medal ceremony, like when they're like giving you like the trophies and whatnot on stage, there is another guy behind the dude giving out the trophies that is like getting their information and cutting them a check on the stage.
Ooh, that's
that
nice.
Sick.
But I'm like, yeah, sorry, we're not getting any love from the Emp Lemon documentary about Hungry Box. It's all about Captain Crunch. That's crazy.
Genuinely, okay, so genuinely, I think I am glad that Captain Crunch gets the credit that he deserves for that era because Hungry Box and Captain Crunch were grinding together a lot, and I genuinely do think that the difference maker was Captain Crunch. But I also do think that the environment that Hungry Box had here, where he had consistent offline melee practice, like at a moment's notice every single day, I think also genuinely helped a lot.
It does help
I,
because the narrative around Hungrybox for the past couple of years has been Hungrybox streamer box is really there's some obstacles to winning a major with all of the other stuff that he's got going on. I'm
yeah.
not a Hungrybox hater. I love the Amp Lemon documentary despite its flaws, like any other thing that is made about Melee, especially in documentary format. But when I saw Hungrybox win Gommel, was it Gommel 2022, or was that just when he beat Cody and the reverse pop off happened? It might have been a different event,
The
but I'm
reverse
pretty sure it
pop-off
was
is
Gommel
something special.
2022 because I think that was over JMOOC, so that sounds right to me.
I
That's
remember.
cool.
I remember this tournament. I think you're right. I think it was. I think it was 2022. Gommel sounds right.
Hmm.
But
But you were
no,
starting
I
to get
talk
back
about all this. I talk
into
about this
Melee
era,
tournaments
and
more in 2016 is where we
yeah. So this all happens. Like, you can imagine. We talk about all this, right? It's like Hungry Box went to like Evo, and like this was like the start of like the HBox era. Like when he moved in, I was like, well, shit, I gotta start playing Melee again, right? Like if I'm gonna be this directly like close to Melee again, right? Like I should make the most of it. So I started traveling to events again, and I was actually doing pretty well at these events. So the very first one I went to was Pound 2016. So I had all these out of state events, and then Pound 5 in 2010 happened, and then everything was a Georgia tournament until Pound 2016. So I went from pound to pound.
Wow.
And it was the first pound, like, because the other thing about Pound 5 was the payout issue for Pound 5, right? So for
Yes.
those that don't remember, Pound 2016 was the very first pound after Pound 5.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a comeback story, and it was like we got to get Ziff back here. Ziff, I know that you haven't gone to an out-of-state tournament in a
No,
while. Actually, I was already planning on coming. Oh, so I guess we won't pay you to come out there. No, wait.
no, never. I only recently. I have gotten. I made my first dollar off of Melee, not like placing in money. In December, I got hired to do commentary at DreamHack Atlanta, and I've had a few paid gigs since then. So I'm hoping to do that more. For any TOs out there that are hiring to do Melee commentary, my services are available. Um, but no, I go to this tournament in 2016. At the time, I was super nervous, right? Because I knew how big Melee had gotten, and I didn't know where I belonged at that point, right? Like I felt like I felt like an outsider, right? It was like so much different than what I had been used to, and I was just like, just like a lot of the normal kinds of like self-doubt and anxiety. It's like, imposter syndrome. It's like, is anybody gonna like want to like, like hang out with me or like play with me or what am I doing here, blah blah blah. And I remember going to the registration desk, and it was this girl that was doing registration and like the t-shirts and whatnot, and I'm like shaking nervous, right? And she's like, can I get your name and your tag? And it's like, yeah, my name is Alex Campos, my tag is Ziff. And she hears my tag and she starts laughing. So when she starts laughing, I'm on like high alert. I'm like, oh no, what's going on? What's happening? Why am I being laughed at? What did I do wrong? Like I'm freaking out. And then come to find out that just by pure coincidence, the person that I had gone up to do my registration with was an ex-girlfriend of Plank, the head TO of Pound, who was helping out for that event. And she remembered me because I had housed her and Plank back when I was living in Florida, like 15 years prior to that.
No big deal.
It's like stayed over at my house, and I was like, I did not recognize her. I remembered like what she was talking about, but I would have never been able to pick her out from the lineup or anything like that, right? Just like it had been so long ago. I was in high school at the time, and in 2016 I was like in my late 20s, right? So that whole interaction happened, and it just completely like just like put everything at ease. I was like, if something like this can happen, there's still got to be people around. I still have done something in this scene, even if it was giving somebody a couch to sleep on, during a trip one night. Um, and just everything after that like went like smooth sailing. It was a super fun event. I met a lot of people. I had a pretty decent bracket run. I remember I got 49th at that event, I want to say. Pound 2016. The only thing I remember was having an absolute nail biter game 3 last stock set versus West Balls during round 2 pools. And mind you, this is like my first tournament back. My pool runner has no idea who I am, right? All he sees is like some random ass Peach player about to knock West Balls into losers, like top like 128, right? He's like, what the fuck? He was losing his mind. And then I ended up losing, and I was like, oh dang. And like I turn around and it's just like my pool runner, like his eyes wide, he's like, what the fuck was that set? um and ever since then, so like after that break between 2010 and 2016, Pound 2016, I've been going to at least like one major event each year. Obviously, there was a bit of a downturn with the pandemic, um, but that whole 6 month era, HBox moves in. He starts going on his meteoric rise. I start traveling to tournaments again. I'm going to these events. I'm starting to place like kind of well. Like a year later was when I had that set versus none. And it was going pretty well for a while. And the pandemic might have had some to do with it, why I eventually just kind of stopped taking singles as seriously. But I don't know. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of emotional stamina to make it through a melee bracket, and to like practice and to be good and to fail and to try again, and to the path to improvement is difficult. It's very fun, but it's difficult. And I've been there before, and I know what it takes to make it happen. And I am not built for it. Not right now. I like doing commentary. I like being involved with Melee. I like watching Melee. And I like talking about Melee. I could talk for hours about Melee. So this is what I do instead. I talk with people about Melee. I do commentary. I like doing these podcasts. I'm genuinely so glad that you wanted to have me on for this. This is the exact kind of stuff I wish I could do more, is just share my story with Melee, because I genuinely do think I have very interesting stories to tell. I've lived with Hungrybox, and I've been to Disney World with Mango. It's it's been quite a journey.
And inexplicably, you ended up at the Paris Olympics this year.
Yeah, that was completely unrelated. My dad was able to get a really nice trip together for myself and a couple of my siblings to go to the Paris Olympics. And that was a lot of fun.
So it's like, like living best life type of thing. I was telling my lovely wife, Jen, I'm like, I wouldn't have, I don't really have any desire whatsoever to go to an Olympics, not even when it comes to America. It'll be in Los Angeles, so that's one problem. I'm like, but yeah. Other people going, heck yeah, you go live your dream. I wanted to ask you, yes, about your perspective on how things change, and you sort of talked about it about yourself. For me, I understand the feeling about, there are things that I know I would have to do to become a good enough player to be PR on the local, and then to approach top 100, and then to become top player. I've never achieved any of those things, but I know what it takes to take the first 2 steps forward, and I have a rough idea about what happens after that, because something that you don't appreciate right away as a player or a viewer of Melee is you don't appreciate how, when you get to a new level, when you get to from a regional to a major, for example, and you're playing in pools, you will find not just different play styles, but different execution tests. You discover there are almost a countless amount of execution tests that you could get bodied on if you don't understand the character's frame data that you're playing against. If it's not because, oh, I don't understand how long it takes for an aerial or a smash attack to come out, how many frames, that's not necessarily what I mean. But just, you have to really know the game in and out, and then practice certain scenarios over and over and over again in things like Huckle Punch, where you lab out certain scenarios. And when you watch, and we would hopefully talk about this, we'll see if we have time, but I'll let you say something on it. When you look at someone like Cody, there are people who would accuse him of being boring. I might think to myself that what Cody is doing in front of me is not necessarily the most entertaining style of Melee that I've seen play, but it's one of the best styles of Melee I've ever seen play, because we're talking about some of the best recovery mix-ups and defense and amazing punish that you will find in a player, along with good neutral. In a player like Cody, you have a viable number one-esque player for as long as he wants to do this. He can do this for a really long time and be number one viable for a really long time, because what he's got going on is amazing. I love the tweet that you sent out a little while ago about it being like, Cody's just really good. You cannot take that away from him.
Yeah, I can definitely see where people could look at a player like Cody and think that it's boring, right? You know, at very surface level. And I do think the things that make Cody very impressive are maybe more apparent if you have played the game or you know about the game a little bit more.
Yes.
Like, if all you've done is watch Melee, right? You know, maybe you don't really understand it. But I think a feeling that even a casual audience can understand, and what it is that makes Cody so impressive, is he plays so precisely and so well that it's almost like he sucks the oxygen out of the match, where the opponent is left with no air to breathe. And even though Cody isn't doing some like crazy task level stuff, the stuff that he is doing is just suffocating. And you really do get the feeling that Cody has just planned for every contingency, like Doctor Doom just has like cut off all options. That's how I view Cody. That's why I find his gameplay so impressive, because when he's on, it's just to me it was the first to 10, the match, the Zane Cody first to 10 last year for number one. Watching that set, I really thought Zane was going to win. If I would have bet money, I would have bet it on Zane.
Shouldn't have let him take that time out. I'm saying Zane won like what, 3 or 4 in a row to tie it back up at 6, and I'm going like, no, don't stop. But it's fair, it's fair. And then of course as it developed, I was like, no, now Zane, now you time out. Zane, you time out. Zane.
No, that was great. I genuinely, my only wish for that set is that it would have gone a full 19 games instead of the 17 games that we got.
It's still pretty close to being like, you know what I mean? Like it
yeah, no, 10-7 is really close. And a first to 10, like that's still really, really close. I selfishly wish that there was more Melee to be had that day. However, watching Cody play that set, it becomes obvious, because you're talking about a matchup where there is no room for error. Not against Zane, right? Zane is going to take any opening and turn it into a 0 to death punish, right? So seeing Cody convincingly win matches like that, where honestly against a player like Zane, the only like way that you can beat Zane is to take the oxygen out of his Marth, right? Like you have to suffocate the Marth. Marth can't be given any opportunity, right? And it's just it's awe-inspiring, honestly. Like I think even if you don't know Melee, if you are familiar with competition, with that type of 1v1 like competitive aspect, I think that that's a vibe that you can understand just from watching Cody, even if you don't know anything else. And I think that in and of itself is impressive.
Some of my favorite Cody moment, or one of my favorite Cody moments, was at the last Shine. It was last year, going into last stock versus Zane and just laughing because he's got that confidence. I wish we saw that Cody just a little bit more, or you could say like a little bit unhinged, maybe perhaps, but all the same results. And if you look for something to be impressed by, you don't have to actually look very far. You just got to get beyond the first 1 or 2 impressions, I guess. But we know, XIF, there are not a lot of people who are willing to look beyond first blush. There's a lot of people who are willing to start to spew things out of their mouth just on one impression. It's people tough out here being degenerate. And then maybe hater energy because this is the number one player and we want to see anyone take him down. It was a big day for the Cody haters when Bing won that set in top. Was it even top 128 at Gommel this year? Well, whatever round of bracket it was.
You know, that type of I guess dynamic. I don't think says anything about a player like Cody. For whatever reason, Mango is mostly immune to that. I don't really understand why. Like, I love Mango, and like I can appreciate a good Mango win just like anybody else. But there are there's been this shift where people are like saying Donkey Kong main derogatory, and there's a lot of Donkey Kong hate out there. Like even from Cody. Cody has been on the record like spewing some Donkey Kong hate, and I just don't understand how you could see someone. I think it was like a Kier that had to play against Moki at Tipped Off, and like people were just not kind to the DK, but they were like solely up for like the foxes. Like, we see enough foxes. Like, have you not seen enough fox yet? Like, don't you want to see a little bit of DK? Don't you want to mix things up a bit?
We want to see Moki win an event at some point. Oh my gosh. Moki will have to play a long time before becoming like SFAT, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's tough to be a really good, like, up there top 5 type player and not win a major yet. It's really tough to be that player.
It is, and Moki is really, really good. If someone like Moki keeps plugging at it, the opportunity will come, right? Like, you don't get to top 4 on accident, right? It's not. There is, and there's something to be said. I was watching some podcast thing with Luminosity. It had like MK Leo and Spargo, I want to say, but they had. Who was it that they had on there?
Was it Zane? Because it's Meister and MK Leo who host Luminosity's podcast video thing.
That was it. It was Meister and MK Leo with Zane, right? And they're asking about winning a major. And one of the things that they said is like, it is exceedingly hard, obviously, to win a major. But once you get the first one and you've gotten that feeling, it becomes much easier to win more after that. So I think for someone like Moki, you just got to like get over that like last little bit of the hump, and then after that it's all going to be downhill. I think once Moki wins their first major, it'll be like not like a three-peat like right away, but genuine major contender thereafter.
Yes, there's a bit of a block to winning the first one. I mean, we saw it with Jmook. It's just that Jmook was able to break through, which is nice. You love to see the W stories, but sometimes you have to wait a while, like Amsa waited a really long time to go from breakout player to actually winning the big one. That was 9 years.
And I tell people all the time, it was years before I did any better than 2-2 at a bracket, right? So for 2 years, I was, switching around mains. I was not very good. I wasn't getting like far in brackets at all. Like, I was bad. I was a baddie. And eventually I got a little bit better. I, plugged away at it. I think a big thing is that a lot of people don't know how to improve. And even back then, I didn't really know how to improve. I just got a little bit better at pushing the buttons. But I had a real eye-opening moment with Forward, a legendary Falco player from Arizona, who used to play with Wobbles and Taj, was also one of the best Marvel 3 players for a long time. But he had a whole road trip up and down and around the United States, and one of his stops was in Florida, where I was living at the time as in high school. And I remember sitting down and playing with him, and I was already like doing pretty well. I was a Peach main. I had like done well at like Florida locals at that time. But it was like, oh my god, I don't know how to explain it. It was like a glass shattering moment where like something inside my head just like tick, and like everything just like shattered, and like my third eye was opened, and I could just like perceive melee.
You're
like,
seeing the code in the Matrix.
No, I was genuinely in the cave looking at the shadows in Plato's allegory of the cave, and Forward took me out of the cave into the sunlight to see like what was actual like melee supposed to be like. And I think that's difficult. I think a lot of people get stuck in where I felt like I was at, which is pushing buttons without a lot of critical thinking. And I think the skills that you need to improve and to be better than you were before is a set of skills independent of the game that a lot of people struggle to learn.
So you could say that you have acquired a very specific certain set of skills.
That's true.
You will find the edge guard and you will
I will
convert
find
it.
these space animals and I will murder them.
So talk to me about your perspective of Unranked coming out, because when Leffen puts out the video, this whole Slippy thing, Slippy, and I'm going, okay, all right, there's a new online client, rollback is a thing I've never heard of. I was not necessarily a hater at first. I was just like, how are you supposed to take a game that was never meant for online netcode and somehow make it better than what we have now? And what is rollback? So once I learned about that and watching it, and then subsequently when I had access to the technology playing it, you know, the truth. But what was your experience like? Because you probably played Dolphin at some point. You probably had played delay-based netcode at some point, even if not a lot, because you're in the right region. Like we were saying, 2016. Yep. What is you don't need Anther's Ladder in that year in that timeline.
No, I would wake up, I would roll out of bed, and there would be nerds in my living room playing Smash Brothers. I'd be like, all right, let's get to work. For me, it's interesting. So
sorry, please continue.
I did all the versions of NetPlay, right? I've done it at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like I said, I also have a background in traditional FGC. So I got my start with traditional fighting games in 07 with Guilty Gear Accent Core. And I transitioned to playing Street Fighter 4. I played a little bit of Tekken 6. A few other games here and there. I played a bunch of different fighting games, but none of their games had particularly good netcode either. But I was familiar with rollback netcode because that was right when people were starting to talk about it a lot. Or maybe I feel like Street Fighter 5 they were talking about. There was a lot more problems with Street Fighter 5, but Street Fighter 5 came out, and between that and like 2020, you know, the conversation about rollback starts ramping up, and I knew that it was something implemented in Fightcade, I want to say. I think Fightcade is based off of GDPO. I could have that wrong, but some basically like Slippy, a fan-made client, right? And for me, I will say right off the bat, NetPlay is not for me. I don't like playing online, and that has nothing to do with the quality of the online. Slippy is by far the best online experience I think you can get out of a modern fighting game right now. From like the thought popping into your head, like, I want to play some Melee with people on the internet, to having a controller in your hand playing somebody on the internet in Melee is like 30 seconds or less, which is impossible in any other game, right? So I think the speed and accessibility is uniquely good for Slippy, and I think the Slippy era and the rollback era in particular has been such a huge boon for the community. It's just not for me. I don't like. I like having the person next to me. I like being able to talk with them. You know, to me, it's just like weird. You know, when I was a kid, like when I was in high school and I was first getting into Melee is what like introduced me to being social. Like before that, I was, you know, a kid that stayed in the room and played video games. I didn't have like a lot of friends at school. I didn't really like get out of the house that much. And Melee was what got me to get out of the house, you know, break out of my shell a little bit, and to learn how to socialize and to, you know, be a human being in society, right? And to me, my relationship with Melee is almost predicated on that, right? Like, if the only way that I can engage with Melee is through online, that I don't really want that version of Melee, right? Like, not to say that, you know, if you only play online that's bad, or that there's anything wrong with it. It's just, for me personally, that's not what Melee is for me, right? You know, Melee is just as much the social aspect and having someone there with you to talk with and play with, as it is, you know, playing the game itself, right? You know, just as much the community as much as it is Melee in Melee community, right?
If there was
sorry, there's a lot of thoughts I have about it. The help that Slippy did to keep the scene afloat and to introduce new players into the scene cannot be understated. I don't think I will say Melee doesn't survive, because I think the only thing that kills Melee is the eventual heat death of the universe. But I think Melee is in a much worse spot, much worse spot if Slippy doesn't come out when it did during that time, during the pandemic. And I think a lot of the successes that we have today are very directly due to Slippy.
Of course, the new influx of players and the players who revive their interest in the game and so on. I mean, there's a stark difference between the vibes from Pound Online, which was played on delay-based netcode, and it was bad objectively. So then having the next big online thing just be better. It was better. It worked out.
Yeah. And just a funny little personal anecdote for me on this. This was something I came to realize just like a year or two ago. But when Slippy had like first come out, and I see Fizzy posting all the updates, right? And I was like, Fizzy, it's like I feel like I know this guy, right? I was like, I'm pretty sure I know this guy. I feel like I've met this guy before, right? And I wasn't like 100% sure. But I thought I had the context of it. I just didn't know for sure. And I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to go on Twitter and be like, hey, at Fizzy, do you remember me? Lol. And he's like, no, who the fuck are you? Right. And then I just look like a fucking asshole. But it was in the back of my head for a while. And then like finally I checked out his like profile and I saw his name and I was like, well, let me see if I know him like from Facebook or something like that. And sure enough, I pull up his name. We're already friends on Facebook. And what it turns out is that I had actually housed Fizzy for Tips Off one year. So he had actually stayed over at my house. And when I went to my Facebook Messenger DM, it was a message from him. He had messaged me saying, hey, XIF, I just wanted to say thank you for the housing this weekend and congrats on your big win versus Plup. So I'm holding on to that DM for now. That was crazy whiplash. Like I didn't realize that we were Facebook friends already, and then like I looked it up and like I saw that we were already friends, and I went to the Facebook Messenger DMs and we had already been like messaging. Just like I don't know, I could look it up right now. It was, like,
You probably don't remember me,
like
Cody,
that.
but I actually casted you at Tips Off 12. Yeah, XIF, you hosted me at your house.
It was the same thing. And Cody was joking around, right? But he was like, "Oh yeah, I wasn't big name enough for you to be able to remember me, right?" And I mean, it's partially true, but also I just want to point out that he was over at my house and he was hanging out, and I had no idea who he was. I was equal opportunity. I wanted everybody to enjoy themselves and have a good time.
There's just like this is probably going to be the name of the episode, something effective. Oh, you actually housed me. There's something like that. That's what I am finding to be. It's not because you have bad memory. It's just because you talked about it. The Wednesday night locals. There's probably at your house. Excuse me. There's probably someone who stayed longer than they should have, aka slept on the floor or whatever into the morning. There's been one too many tournaments and one too many housings where again you know what I mean.
It is both genuinely like. I mean, I don't have like the greatest memory for that type of stuff, but it's just a lot of people. I've had so many people. I've come across so many people. I love that part of it. I love the fact that I have met so many different people. And sometimes, I don't remember everyone. And, we only met like the one time, but I'm really happy that they were able to have even that one memory with me. And if it ever comes up, I always try to make it a point to talk to them more and to try to get to know them a little bit better. Because even if you didn't leave an impression back then, or we didn't become best friends, or I can't remember like you from back then, like, A, like, please don't blame me. I meet so many different people. But B, maybe this is an opportunity for us to get to know each other now, right?
Absolutely. Has anyone, this is the best way that I can summarize it right now, and it ties into your awesome t-shirt. Has anyone ever gotten the takeout Waffle House order and thought, this is a great use of my time and resources? No. You go to Waffle House for the food, yes, but for the homies. Right?
I'm gonna be careful about how you talk about Waffle House. I am a Waffle House evangelist. All right.
Hey, look, I'm ready to jump off the pylon one more time from the top rope. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Waffle House is cool in the sense that it's an emergency meetup spot for communities who don't have any other 24/7 thing happening. If I know no one got me, I know my Waffle House got me.
That's true. Waffle House is there for you no matter what. More reliable than FEMA, so much so that they use them as a metric.
Oh, what's FEMA?
Federal emergency, something or another.
That's the thing I'm talking about. I didn't realize I was talking about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's called the Waffle House Index, but yes, they use Waffle House and how well it is operational in an area to measure how much disaster a tornado or a hurricane has wrought upon a city.
Is the Waffle House still up? Yes. All right
Yes,
then.
if the Waffle House is up and operational, it's fine.
They're gonna
If
be
the
all
Waffle
right.
House is limited menu on a generator, it's like not looking too good. And if the Waffle Houses are closed, it is devastation. You need to get out.
I'm not a Waffle House hater. I just know that all right. What was your takeout Waffle House experience like, Ziff?
I always get the hash brown bowl, the Texas cheesesteak hash brown bowl.
So you have gotten takeout Waffle House before?
Yeah, I live in Georgia. Of course, I've done Waffle House. I've had Waffle House as an actual breakfast. I've had Waffle House at 5 a.m. I've had Waffle House to go. I've had Waffle House for lunch sometimes. It's Waffle House. It's always there.
All right, I stand corrected. I thought no one in America besides, I guess, rural areas got takeout from Waffle House. So that's just on me. That's on me.
No, so I think in the South, like most states have like 100, 150 Waffle House locations. Georgia has like over 400 Waffle Houses.
Oh, wow.
It is. It started in Georgia. It's a Georgia restaurant, so it's very much part of the culture here.
When I have visited Georgia on a very, very, very limited basis, I remember vaguely, isn't it like also about peaches as well? Isn't that a big thing?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're the peach state. That's
Yes.
like the actual like tagline for Georgia.
So
the
how
peach
fast
state.
can we change it to the Waffle House state then?
If only we lived in such a world.
Would you vote for that if it was on the? You know how they vote to make weed legal or not, like on like and they make the confusion question.
I would sell the state legislature to Waffle House if I could. I think they would do a better job of running this joint.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is I just stepped on like a little bit of a landmine, a little bit of a passion.
Yes, Waffle House is a passion, but to get back to what we were talking about before, I can't even remember what the.
Well, you were you know Slippy's not for you, but you recognize the value that it adds. And then when we came back, when we were so back, tell me about the first tournament that was a regional in Georgia, or it could be a national tournament that you went back to post pandemic.
Yeah, so the last tournament I went to pre-pandemic was actually technically AGDQ 2020. So I went to AGDQ 2020 in Orlando. It was January of 2020. It was like, that was like a couple months before things went bad, right?
Right.
There was a Melee tournament there, though. I entered the Melee tournament, and somehow, some way, I went to the one GDQ where I couldn't just sweep the entire bracket, and I had another one of those Game 10 Grand Finals against CDK. If you know who that is, a pretty legendary Melee player from California, I want to say. They do the video editing now for False Swipe Gaming, which is, I think, pretty cool. I really like False Swipe Gaming. I had that tournament in January 2020, and then I didn't do anything for the rest of 2020. And then I almost didn't do anything for all of 2021, except there is a yearly tournament in Georgia called the Players Ball, which is basically just a Christmas party for all the Georgia Melee players. You're encouraged to dress up if you want to. We do like a Secret Santa type of thing, and then we have drinks and a Melee bracket, right? So there was no Players Ball in 2020 because of the pandemic, but by December of 2021, people had been vaccinated and things were just starting to open back up. And that was the first tournament that I had went to, which was just the Players Ball, which I got second at, but it's not like a super serious tournament. A lot of people are drinking. And
yes, you had mentioned drinks. Yep.
So I mentioned that because I technically have never gone any single calendar year without going to some Melee tournament, right? So January 2020 to December 2021 is the longest I've gone without entering a Melee tournament. But I did manage, one in 2020, one in 2021, and then since
Mm-hmm.
then it's been pretty consistent. In 2022, I started going to a few locals, and then I guess the first really big event was Tipped Off 13, Tipped Off Reunion, and this was before it really popped off. It was the first one run by Ohan in 2022, and that was more of a regional event. Crudo, Sheik player from Orlando, won that event. I want to say Logan was in that top eight.
Oh, let's go, Logan. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Logan
cool.
was in that top eight. Logan was playing really, really well. Panda was in that top eight as well. I think Mech was in that top eight,
What
funnily
about
enough.
Cobalt? Where's Cobalt in all this? You
Cobalt
haven't.
was in that top eight, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Cobalt
Mm-hmm.
got seventh. I'm pretty sure Cobalt lost pretty early on that top eight. Moth, I want to say, was in that top eight as well. Yeah,
Desku. And I
it
didn't
was
know about Moth until Tipped Off 14, I want to say, or some other tournament last year in 2023 is when I first heard about Moth.
Yeah, so in 2022, Moth came out to Tipped Off, and I talked to her for a while because she's from where I was originally from in South Florida, right? She's from Miami. I was from a city like maybe 30 minutes out of Miami. And her and I were just talking a lot about like some of like the South Florida lore, some of the players that I knew from back then that were still active when she started playing, and just reminiscing on some of that old stuff, right? Some of the connections that we had for the Florida scene. Um, but she was really good back then, and I was doing commentary. I did top eight for Tipped Off 13 as well. So I was there doing commentary with another Georgia player, Ronan, and then an old school Georgia legend, Onish, Flo. Um, and that was like kind of that was the first big event after the pandemic that I went to.
So when did you find out that Ohan was more or less selling his soul to make Tipped Off 14 super, super big? Because it popped off last year. It's when a lot of the top 10 players showed up, and when we were all going, is this going to be like a thing? Yeah, it's going to be a thing.
It is, yeah. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to the actual event, but I did help out a little bit with some of like the prep work and whatnot. Ohan is a machine. I want to get this out of the way. Ohan is one of the best to ever do it. I have been good friends with a lot of people in Melee over the years. I've known a lot of TOs over the years,
Shout
and
out to Full Metal.
yeah, Full Metal, Full Metal. I consider genuinely a very close friend of mine, and what he had to go through, I don't wish on anyone. And this is not at all a knock on Full Metal. I think Full Metal ran great events. He was also the head melee TO for Apex. Not a lot of people know that, but he used to be the melee, specifically the melee side of Apex.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but Ohan is just really good at his job. He just knows what he's doing. Just has like a really good understanding, is really willing to learn from the mistakes and shortcomings of both himself and other people in the space. And for me, seeing Ohan succeed like that, not that I thought it was a given, because I really do think that a lot of it comes down to luck, right? Like sometimes you just need the right set of circumstances to like really like set you off, and and you'll pop off, your event will pop off, or you as whatever it is, right? Sometimes it's just like the roll the dice, right? But Ohan had all of the work ethic and skill necessary to pop off like he did, and every single thing that has happened during that time and since then is 100% deserved. Ohan is just he's the best. the GOAT TO, and I'm willing to say it already.
Dang. So what about Tipped Off 15 from this year? Talk to me about the things that you remember, since it's fresh on your mind. This was the time when I first heard your voice and came to know you, because I'm watching this stream, right? And I'm going, who's Zeph? And found you on Twitter, and then going like, oh, this is cool. There seems to be a lot of history with this person, which is great. I always love, like I keep saying, the Austin Melee videos, I can't let the name Austin Melee die, or not on my watch, but the great top 10 videos. Never once cared to mention the contributions to Melee that you've made, always talking about the Kish brothers, and I'm like, I already saw that for the documentary. Well, anyway, so I just wanted to remind you that's where I first saw and heard of you, but then also tell me about the like, however you want to set it up and what comes to mind for Tip Top 15.
Yeah. So, question: Did you see me from me playing teams, or was it me doing commentary?
You doing commentary with WAF?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I saw your post maybe from Hungry Box, when you guys placed fourth in teams, but I was like, it takes more than one impression for me to hear and see a name, and then, but then I like more of the, and I'm like, wait a minute, Ziff is the guy who teams with Hungry Box this weekend. Oh,
yeah.
yes. It takes more than
So
one boop to, like, I had to see
yeah,
Moff more
there's
than once to be like, oh, that's Moff.
a few data points, right? Yeah,
Unfortunately,
that's
yes.
interesting. It's good to know that I get on the radar like that from commentary, so I will keep that in mind. Because sometimes I feel like, or not that I feel like I think a lot of times good commentary is commentary that it doesn't take away from what's happening on screen, right? I think that a lot of times you forget that a commentator might be there, right? I think for the really iconic moments, for like the really big epic like pop-offs and whatnot, a commentator can really add to that like line, right? But I think a good commentator is one that helps tell a story, but that shouldn't leave a specific impression on you, right? Like I don't go into commentary expecting people to be like, oh, like I can't wait for Ziff to hop on commentary or whatever, right? I hope to hop on commentary and that for someone to go on there and not know who I am and learn a little bit more about the game and maybe learn a little bit about the storylines of the players. And, I'm there to help facilitate and
Well,
not be the center of attraction, right? So, but it is nice to know that I can still end up on the radar despite all of that.
curiosity
Um,
gets the better of me. But the other thing that I will say, I like what you say about commentary. Something that I think of when I've done my very limited, low level, local level commentary is I think about telling the audience this is who I'm rooting for, because I don't like to try to give anyone the impression that I'm being objective. I don't mind telling the audience this is who I'm rooting for,
yeah,
and then being appreciative of the other player who I'm rooting against. Like, I don't put them down or anything. I'm just going like, wow, my player just had this super cool sequence, and I'm going to talk about that until the other player does something cool, and then I'll talk about that, and then the next player will do
yeah,
something cool. But I hate commentators, or I don't like their decision to try to be like NFL objective level commentary, where I go, you can be excited,
you can have a little bit of investment in there and
Tell
show a little bit of your
be
color with
be
it,
be
right?
honest with me. Tell me who you're rooting for, even if it's just one or two times. Like, I just need to know that, because if I have to figure out who you're rooting for, that is literally distracting me from the game itself.
So for me, I don't make it a secret if I am rooting for someone, right? Like I remember during that block with WAF, we did a match with Cobalt, right? And like immediately off the bat, I was like, I'm in it for Cobalt. Don't talk to me if you want anyone else. Like I'm in it for Colin, baby. But I'm mostly being facetious about like how I would act. I think to your point, every time I try to do commentary, I always try to frame things as how someone did something right or how well someone is playing. I think a lot of people get really negative on commentary and they talk about like mistakes, or it's like, oh, they shouldn't have done that, they should have done this, or oh, they should have done that. And I try to avoid that at all times. Not at all times, but most of the time, 95% of the time, I try to frame whatever it is I'm trying to say, not as how this person messed up, but how the other person did something well to capitalize on it.
Yeah, because who am I to be like, I couldn't do any better? You're the one playing, not me.
Luckily for me, because I don't have that kind of investment, like personally as a player, I don't have as much direct like vested interest in any like particular person like winning, right? Like there are obviously players I'm going to be rooting for, like Hungry Box is someone that I'm always going to be rooting for like 9 times out of 10, right? Because I know him, he's a friend of mine, lived together, and I want to see him like succeed, right? But even more than that, I really am just interested in watching like some good ass melee, right? So if you give me like a compelling set to watch, like I'm in it. I don't care who's playing, right?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I was talking to you before we started recording officially about my favorite bar that you had in some of the going back and forth with the people who you irked when you called Armada the GOAT on Mango Stream on commentary. And I love this line that you had at one of the end of your tweets in one of these threads that I found. Just simply, in quotes, I was there for Melee, which I love so much. I really think that line goes hard.
It's true. And, the funny part is that people got really hung up on that. And for me, it was such a throwaway line. I called like at least 20 different people GOAT that weekend, right? Everybody was like GOAT, right? It was just, to me, like, I understand there's a specific meaning, it's an acronym, and it means something specific. But in context, in that moment, it was a vibe of me just trying to give someone a appropriate term of endearment, right? So, like, to me, I was just like, it wasn't even about Armada being the best. I was talking about something else entirely. Like, I think I was talking about how Armada picked Young Link against Puff. Like, I was talking about how bad the matchup for Peach Puff was. That someone like Armada the GOAT decided that Peach wasn't good enough and went Young Link of all characters, right? And like, it just
But that was enough.
Like,
that was enough.
Let's use context clues. Let's use our critical thinking skills to maybe understand the point that I was trying to make rather than get caught up in the definitions.
No, I'd rather spend the effort instead of listening for 2 seconds. I'd rather spend the next 10 minutes on Twitter just going absolutely crazy and on Twitch chat. One seems like a really big time save. That's the one where I get to hate for 10 minutes.
It was funny. But Tip Top 15, I mean, that didn't really bother me. It does. It's not nice to hear people say mean things about you. But really taking to heart like what they were saying, like a lot of the stuff that they were talking about was just wrong. So I'm not sweating it. But Tip Top 15, I did a lot of the same stuff that I did in the lead up for Tip Top 14. So I do my own form of shilling. It's not like Ohan like tells me like, hey, I need you to like contact like XYZ person and like do this for me. Like me personally, because I know so many people out there and I want to like hang out with my friends and I don't have to buy a plane ticket when they could buy a plane ticket and come to me to our event here in Georgia. So I try to put out the word. I try to shill as much as I can. I offer housing for a lot of people. So over the years, I have, had a boatload of people stay over at my house for free housing for Tipped Off weekend. I did it a lot more back in the day. Like for Tipped Off, like 11 and 12, I had like 20 people like crashing at my house over the weekend, right? And like I made no guarantees. I was like, I've got floor space for you, and like maybe a pillow if you're lucky. So like y'all can figure it out after that. These years I do it a little bit more low key. I keep it to like maybe 5 or 6 people. But I've got like, I've got a proper house here. At the time I had a completely spare bedroom and like these nice $200 air mattresses. So, I had proper accommodations for people this year. And this past year I housed Salami, Fox player from California.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who else was it that I housed? Redman, another player from North Carolina. A few people from Carolinas, I want to say. Years prior, I'd housed some people from like Alabama. And then if you go like way back, I mean, like the first time I ever met Gatsu was like him staying over at my house.
The
like,
who's who of who stayed at Ziff's house.
It's been a lot of people. I also help out. I help out Ohan sometimes with the flights. I have like an American Express Sky Miles card, so I have like a bunch of Delta Sky Miles, and I have used some of my Sky Miles to help fly out players. I think I've paid for a plane ticket for none.
That is how you know you are the homie. Oh my gosh. I'm starting to understand like some of the little secret isms that Ohan's just got a Ziff in his pocket, as it turns out.
I have to tell you though, what I do in comparison to what Ohan is like normally doing, like I help out like with maybe 2 to 3% of like what makes like tipped off, right?
Yeah, because he's got to be awake and there the whole time.
That's probably even more than what I'm actually contributing. Ohan does so much because like I help pay for like a plane ticket for like one person and he is like buying like a dozen plane tickets, right?
Right.
You know, I'm like housing people, and he's got like an Airbnb so that Mango can do his boot camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, any little help that I'm doing, Ohan is doing tenfold. But one of the things I really do appreciate about Ohan is his appreciation for how it takes a village. And he explains that, I don't think he gives himself enough credit, because I genuinely do think a lot of it is the Ohan show. But I also do think that he does get a lot of help from the community, from people like me, from people like Ron Aroni, who has been involved with it before, and also Ohan relies on what has been established before him. A big reason why he wanted to use the Tipped Off name, he contacted Full Metal, and he like told him like he wanted to host this event, he wanted to use the Tipped Off name, and it's because he has a lot of appreciation for the history of the people before him that helped establish the scene to make it what it is today, right? So even if someone like me is not like directly helping with a tipped off, not like tangibly, like I'm like housing someone or I'm helping with like a flight, I think Ohan has a lot of appreciation for people like me, or like Wes, GA Wes, who's like the godfather of Georgia Melee, of the work that they had put in over years and years and years and years to get them to a point where they could think about flying someone out for an event and have it be a good idea, right?
It takes a little bit of a build up, which is why the first one was still regional, but then just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, seemingly, it kind of snuck up on a bunch of people, kind of like Battle of BC. But shouts to Deer, who can stick with it, even surviving the pandemic. I mean, with all the Gallant Melee Opens during the pandemic, like the online ones, but then saying we're bringing back Battle of BC. Oh, and now it's going to be a major. This is great. This is great. It gives
Yeah.
me a lot to be I don't want to say hopeful about, because I don't think it's that sappy, but when you have something like the Big House go down, and it's not a detriment to Robin, but you need something to be not the same, but you need to have
There's a hole to
offerings.
fill.
You need to have offerings that could one day become big houses. Not that we will always have, like, there's never been another like Pound that we say, oh, this is the same exact feeling, but we need an event to become something that's sort of like a big house, if you will. But
Yeah.
you're really, when you look around the melee sphere as it is today, I guess we can talk about today. We've already done some today meta talk. When you look around and you see all these tournaments that are starting to garner more entrants, which is great, and even, it's my favorite thing, tournaments that don't have ultimate involved. And it is not because I hate ultimate. It's just because do we really need ultimate? Look, ultimate has ultimate only events, and we act like it's a bad idea to have melee only events. No, it's not. If you do it really well, the people will come. That's what I'm saying.
No, I agree. And I don't think it's any knock on Ultimate or anything like that. I think the games can coexist fine. I think both communities are valid. There are plenty of people I know that are almost strictly like Ultimate, that I consider, friends of mine, or at least, good acquaintances.
I know what you're saying, but the way that you said it was so funny. It was like, I I I know people who've been, like convicted in court from a thief,
I have Ultimate friends.
robberies, but I still consider them friends, or at least acquaintances, is how it was delivered. And I know that you've been avoiding talking down to anybody this whole time, so I'm not going to take this out of context, and no one else should be taking it out of context either. But just to reiterate, Ultimate has so many Ultimate only events, so we should feel free to have melee only events. Please continue. You're I cut you off. Please continue.
No, you're fine. I think that's true. Tipped Off was a great example. Tipped Off was a melee only event. And also, something that people might not realize is that Tipped Off 13 had both melee and ultimate. It wasn't until, and historically, the Tipped Off series has always been melee plus a game, right? So, for a while it was melee only, like when it was just Brawl. But after a few years, Tipped Off was melee and PM, and then after that it was melee and Smash 4, and also PM. So, Tipped Off as a series has been multiple Smash games, and it wasn't until Tipped Off 14 that it became a melee only event. And I remember talking to Ohan about it, and Ohan just said, the Ultimate side of stuff wasn't very good. It wasn't as good an event that I hold my standards to. And I don't have a lot of passion for the game personally. Like I really like Melee. I don't like Ultimate as much. I'm just doing it, to run the event rather than a vested interest in it.
Right.
So he made the decision to make Tipped Off Melee only because he felt like that was the best event that he could pull off, was a Melee only event.
And that says that, again, we're talking about Georgia. Georgia has to have plenty of things going on for the Ultimate scene down there, because I'm just conflating it to.
Georgia used to be one of the strongest states, like one of the strongest regions in the world for Ultimate,
Right.
for the first few years.
Mm-hmm. So they're doing just fine. Okay. All right. And I still like Ultimate as a friend, but I've become a big believer in Melee only stuff because we have seen there's a light in the tunnel. There can be a thing. So when you hear about something like don't park on the grass and you hear that it keeps capping, like, do you feel the call in your heart, or are you truly just like, I mean, I like, it's cool that there are other events happening, but I can't expect to get to every single one of these things, especially in 1 year. But is there an event that you see coming up that you say to yourself, I would go, but I'm not gonna?
I mean, there are a lot of events that I miss out on that I think about. I need to, because I genuinely want to do more commentary, and what I need to do is I need to start applying to more things. I have been applying to a few gigs, but I have not been applying to every Melee gig like I should be. Just because I think about it, because I have to fit my like Melee and commentary and everything else around a full-time job, right?
Right.
This is just my hobby. I'm not quitting my day job. I work a 9 to 5, and I have no desire to quit that 9 to 5 either. It's a cushy life. I like it. But I I get worried about, oh, am I going to be able to like take time off? Like, do I even really want to like, apply for it? Like, what if I can't? And then I end up just like not doing it. So what I really need to do is just be like, let me just start applying. Let me just start doing it. And like, wherever like the cards fall, like I will make my decisions on where to go based off of that. Right. So right now, like my only like must travel, like my like must go to events are Tipped Off, obviously here in Georgia. Smash Camp has been a lot of fun for me the past couple of years. I went for the first time last year, and I went again this year. I really, really like Smash Camp, but that is definitely more vacation than anything. Um, I would love to go to another pound. I'm trying to think of like Riptide just happened this weekend. I definitely had a bunch of FOMO for that.
Yeah, the indoor water park. I mean, it's something that you can do besides, gaming. Yeah.
Yeah. I went to Genesis one year, and it wasn't a good experience for me. And I wonder if Genesis would be a good experience for me again. And it's one of those, that's definitely an event where I want to go again and I should go again, but I don't think I will end up going to Genesis again. And it had nothing to do with like the way the event was ran. It was personally for me not a great experience. Um and part of it was just that I didn't have a lot of people local that I knew that I could like kind of anchor with, right? Anchor in the sense that like, oh, if I need like something to do or like someone to like chat with or something like that, like I have like somewhere or something to do, right? I'm not completely on my own trying to find my own way. And I'm an adult, I can take care of myself, but it's not fun like being at an event by yourself and you don't have like other people to like hang out with. And I just didn't find like a group of people to like hang out with or like anything to do, and it just ended up not being a good time in circumstances that I hadn't experienced at other events. And I think it was just a combination of being so far from home. Even if I'm at a place like MDVA, even though that's like 10 hours from Georgia, there's still so many people from my area that will go there that I know, right? um and this has also changed. I don't like having a separate venue for top eight. I don't like the Sunday separate venue, top eight in a separate theater. I don't like that. I want, first of all, that theater was like horribly overpriced, and I had the worst lower back pain of my life, and I never get back pain. And then also, it's all you get to do that day. The only thing you get to do is like go into that theater and you watch top eights, right? And it's cool, and like the crowd is going crazy, but there's no like I can't like sit down and play Melee with a friend. If it gets to like if there's a set that I don't particularly find interesting that I don't want to necessarily sit down and watch, I love being able to like, oh, let me go and grab a drink with like some friends, or oh, let me sit down and play like a few matches, right? And then you can go back over and you can watch some more of the top eight. That's actually one of the reasons why I think Tipped Off is so cool, because they have the theater and the theater sitting inside the venue
Right.
at that super center. So you get that feeling of like having like a roaring crowd like dedicated to watching that top eight, and then like you can just walk out and like go play Melee if you really wanted to.
It is always hard. A lot of majors will start tearing down on Sunday. It is just the way that it goes. What do you think about playing Melee in a castle in Germany?
I would do it. Bet.
But you need to have a few people to go with you. Like, hey, let's just plan on this for next year. Nikki won this event and it was in April earlier this spring. Or the other one that I think of,
in a castle in Germany.
Yes, Melee in Kornspiker, which is not how it's pronounced in German, if I had to guess. But yes, Melee in a castle.
I can't believe I didn't even hear about this. That's amazing.
They have a really hard limit on how many people can stay. It's a castle, like you can't knock down.
It's the same thing with Smash Camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Smash Camp happens super quickly, and it is like I'm sitting there hitting F5 like when registration goes up these days. So,
and then I also want to shout out, because I want to go to one of these, but I just don't know how realistic, because I don't, for different reasons, right? Because I have wife and kids and other stuff going on that I can't just go to any event, and I can't remember the name of the person that's going to annoy me that runs events up in Canada where get a whole lake house on a lake, and it's like Summit, except it's not really streamed, and there's maybe like 15 or 16 people that go. They're in the lake house for like 3 days. You could go on the water. You got food and drink just sitting there on the kitchen island thing the whole time. Yeah. Those are the vibes. I would love to go with somebody from my region and just be like, hey, we're not expecting to win the bracket or anything. We're just gonna have a good time. Like, that'd be fun.
The closest thing you have for that is definitely Smash Camp, although there's no swimming, and the accommodations at Smash Camp it's like actual like
camp,
not like actual camping in tents, but you're in a cabin, right? Yeah. Like you don't even get blankets and pillows. You have to bring your own blankets and pillows. So
that's how like we'll do what we got to do. The Melee people, that's the other thing that I love about Melee so much. We've dealt with far worse. There's a reason, just carrying around CRTs, we're built for this, all right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually, I just got reminded of two different stories.
Please continue. Please go ahead.
Talking about dealing with far worse. I have done so much traveling. I have lived through some of the worst accommodations known to man. I have literally slept outside before a tournament.
Uphill in the snow and everything, right?
Yeah, uphill both ways. But I had an opportunity earlier this year for CEO. So at CEO 2024, the story behind that is actually funny, because I didn't hear about the opportunity until Tipped Off, which was 2 weeks prior. So Tipped Off Sunday, Moses, who is one of the owners of Polarity GG, the streamers, they do a lot of the white label streaming for CEO, and they've also done it historically for CEO, but they also do a lot of the streaming stuff for Tipped Off. But it was Moses that said Tong, Tampa Never Sleeps Tong, was looking for a Melee commentator for CEO. It was happening in 2 weeks. He asked me if I was going to go, and I was like, well, I wasn't planning on it, but talk to me. What's going on? So it's this like whole like back and forth trying to like figure things out. I'm going like to him. He's like chatting with them. And then finally, like the Monday before, like 5 days before the event, I get the confirmation that I'm doing the event and that they're going to have me over for Melee commentary. I have no housing accommodations. I have no travel accommodations. So basically, I'm like, all right, well, I got to drive, right? I'm not going to get a plane ticket 5 days before the flight, right? I'm not going to pay $800 for a flight, right? Um, and at the time, I was talking with what was it? I was chatting with HBox because when I found out about it, and it was CEO in Daytona, I was like, hey, I'm assuming you're going to this event. You're getting a hotel room. Do you think that there's a spare bed or like maybe like a rollaway I could be on? It's like, yeah, we're getting a hotel room from Team Liquid, um, but we can probably figure out how to get you in, right? The weekend happens, I'm like driving down, or like I've driven down, and the hotel is way smaller than they thought it was going to be. And I didn't have any other choice, and I literally, as a 35-year-old man in the year of our Lord 2024, was sleeping on a hotel room floor again for Melee, right in between HBox on one side and DeBuzz on the other side.
Mm, mm, mm.
And I managed to get some
Mercy.
sleep, surprisingly enough. But yeah, I drove 7 hours to Daytona. I slept on a hotel room floor. I commentated Melee for like 10, 12 hours that weekend. I saw Wizzy make one of the most wildest fucking grand reset comebacks of my entire goddamn life. And then I hopped in my car and I drove straight back to Georgia, and I didn't get back home until like 2 a.m. or something like that.
Went back to work the next day.
I did, yeah. No, I went back to work the next day. Clean. I didn't take any time off. I left a little bit early on Friday. I asked my boss if I could leave like a couple hours early, and he was chill with it. But other than that, I did not take any time off for that weekend. I drove straight there, did the 2 days, Saturday, Sunday of commentary, and I drove right back up. Slept in a hotel room for 2 days for my troubles.
What'd you do this weekend, Alex? Oh, I did because it's a Melee down in Daytona. Oh, that's cool. The one, the new one? No, the one for the GameCube. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, Jake. I was tipped off. Keep up, Jake. I did this for Melee, the one on the GameCube, Jake. Jeez, these coworkers,
That's funny. But yeah, so I was thinking about that, just going through far worse for Melee. And then another thing that just like came up because I was thinking about some of like the older events that I went to. You had mentioned Hada, and I had saw in your videos that you had done some podcast stuff with Hada. So is Hada involved with this as well?
So when I was looking for someone to do a regular what's happening in Melee type podcast, because I've done primarily interviews, I started this off saying I'm going to do this by myself, and hopefully I'll get a guest on every once in a while to talk some Melee stuff with. But it ended up being Melee people are the coolest. I ended up just every episode, I have a new person on, a new person on, new person on. And as you know, the scheduling and the such, it's talking with people to figuring out how to trap them. I mean, coax them onto like at specific times, and please don't miss your time and whatever. I don't have that many horror stories, truthfully, but when it happens, it sets me back a little bit. So I was looking for someone to do not an interview with, because you can't interview someone about their Melee story every week, but someone who I've already had on. Hey, is anybody interested? And I had Christian on. I'd had Hada on maybe a month prior to putting it out onto Twitter. I would like to do a weekly. Yeah, this is what's going on in Melee, because truthfully, there's always so much to talk about. There's more Melee to be played, and there's more Melee to be talked about. And he put his hand up. So we've recorded like 60 plus like week by week episodes before I started to shut things down. I was doing, let's see, from the beginning of 2021 through the middle of 2023, I had done almost 200 episodes of podcasting. So at one point I was doing 4 a week. That was short-lived. It became more like 2 a week on a somewhat regular basis. Nowadays, I've slowed down because I'm doing other stuff and the kids are getting older. I'm homeschooling them along with my wife Jen. She's sort of like the school, I'm the teacher. But like we got stuff going on. So I love doing this. I just don't have as much time for it as I used to.
Yeah, it's many such cases. And no, I bring that up only because, another one of those crazy coincidences. Hada is another person that has stayed over at my place.
Stop! it.
Yes.
This is
So yes,
crazy.
Hada will remember exactly when he was over here. Unfortunately, the time that he was over here was not a great time. We were dealing with a really like, it wasn't like an awful situation. It was just, I was housing absent page at the time as well, and there was a lot of issues with that, but that was not Hada's fault. And I wish, we've talked online since then, and we're chill. I wish that our interactions had ended in person a little bit better. But the first part of that weekend, we had a lot of fun. He's a Peach player as well. And I see him from time to time. I know that he just got engaged as well, right?
He's gonna be getting married in front of people. They eloped, actually. So.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So yeah, no, I wanted to bring that up because I thought it was so funny, and especially after the conversation that we have had, and I was just like, it's like this guy that I met, and this guy that I met, and then I got to name drop Hada on you. I thought that was a great twist.
I love that. Seriously, I joked about it, but I am actually seriously thinking that I want to call this episode something to the effect of "Your Hauser's favorite Hauser." We're gonna find something that'll work.
Yeah, I am the most well-connected nobody. That's what I think the title is, a well-connected nobody.
No,
because
you
I
are
feel
not
like
nobody.
I know a lot of people.
You are somebody.
But I am not very well known.
You are
and
very
I kind of
well
like
known.
that position in the scene. I don't need to be the main character. I like being support. I like uplifting the homies, as it were.
Which is why you've gotten more into doubles then, I take it.
I just think doubles is sick. Listen, every time I try to say doubles is great, everyone just goes lol Peach main, and they ignore me, and they are ignoring the beauty that is on the screen, because doubles is just so cool and so fun, and I wish more people enjoyed it.
What about triples? Have you gotten into triples yet?
Triples. I entered a triples bracket. There was a triples bracket here in Georgia, and we won.
Woo!
It was single elimination, best of 5, 8 triples teams.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I went to an event where they had triples. I just couldn't get a team together. They said, you can't just reg and make your team later. You have to have your team official first. And I was like, dang, my region, whom I love, has a really hard time making things Facebook official until like the day or week before. So I know this is going to cap before we can get something going here.
Many such cases.
Such is the life of a Smasher. You either register really, really early on as soon as you hear about the event, or you're registering last minute. It is what it is. All right, one more thing before we get going, because we've been at this for a while.
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me yap as long as I have. Like I said, I love being able to do this. So however long you're willing to have me, but please continue.
I want to do something to the effect of maybe making a prediction, because I love doing that. I don't go back and listen to old episodes a whole lot, but every once in a while I do think to myself, it'd be fun to try to capture something where someday somebody might be burning through all of these episodes at once. I found podcasts before where I go, oh, I like this. I'll go back and listen to old episodes. I don't do that for every podcast that I listen to, but it's the same thing with finding a new YouTube channel where you go, oh, I like this thing that they just did. Let me go see what the older stuff is like. Like when I first found Summoning Salt, he had been doing videos for a couple of years at least before like I found out who he was. So like easy example. So let's try to do a prediction. So right now, as we both know, Cody, Zane are once again very close, like in terms of running with each other. But who do you think has a better chance of being number one between Cody and Zane? Not to say that anyone else is like directly out of the competition, but between those two, who do you like better for number one for 2024?
So, funnily enough, I was just watching a Mango video talk about this. It wasn't about this specifically. Mango was he had put out a video about why he dropped out of Riptide this past weekend. And he was going over like some of the results for the year, and Zane just won this past weekend, right?
Right.
And I think Zane has enough other major wins that he's like, and also the fact that Cody is taking a break. Cody's not entering any tournaments for the foreseeable future, he said. Like, when I say foreseeable future, my impression was like the next like few months he's going to be taking a break, right?
Right, he might not
That would,
enter something until like towards the end of the year for one last push,
yeah,
but
if that.
that's tough because you would have taken however long off. Exactly.
Yeah, and not just that, but just the fact that you're not on the radar and you don't have more placings to help bolster your resume, right? I think of the two, Zane is the clear favorite, but I honestly think Mango has a much closer shot of being number one when it's all said and done at the end of the year. I think if it had just been tipped off, um I maybe wouldn't think that, but the fact that he both like it was he won tipped off in such a dominating fashion. I mean, Mango just beat the shit out of everyone.
From winners,
Holy
yeah,
crap,
yeah.
it was the best melee that I've ever seen. Mango really, really went off at tipped off. If it had just been that though, I wouldn't necessarily think that, but him also winning Supernova, I think, is a huge deal. It was Supernova that Mango won as well this year, right?
Yes, it was Supernova. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
He even did the throwback. He pointed to NSW in the crowd. That was cool.
so I think Zayn is the likely number one. I don't think Cody gets it, not because he can't, but just because he's simply not going to enter and like have the data points on his resume to justify it. That's the only reason why. But I think after Zayn, I think Mango has the closest shot. And then like after that, like maybe Amsa. Has Amsa won anything this year?
No, not directly won, and that's partially because of Cody. Cody being in bracket really hurts Amsa's chances of winning an event because he was in grand finals winner's side of Battle BC, but then Cody came out of losers and beat him. Like it was that might have been the
With
6
Cody out
though.
of the picture, if Amsa goes like crazy and goes on a tear, maybe Amsa could get it because Amsa, like aside from not like winning a major, Amsa has still been getting consistently like top four, right?
Yes. No, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It just helps you to win events, and it helps to make even a bad matchup look like you can do it. It hurts people like when Zane is 0-6 or whatever it is against Amsa right now. That hurts
Mm-hmm.
him. He doesn't even have one set. Like you need to have something.
What?
Oh, and vice versa, like Amsa versus Cody. What did you say?
I said something. Give me something.
Yeah, just show me that you can do it. Like a game 5 set where you lose that's nice, but you need to get a set win when you're in the top players. Like when we're talking about being the number one player, come on, we have got to slice the cake somewhere. Just give me a little bit of bigger slice, you know what I'm saying? And or if it's not a good cake, I'll just take a small slice. But the next question that I have, because I do consider that a little bit an easier one, because yes, of the reasons you said, Cody taking a break.
Yeah.
Is going to make that really hard for him to be able to hold on to the number one spot, even if you think that he's number one right now. Even if you think that, it's on shaky ground. When will be the next time that Hungry Box wins a major? Can it be this year, or is it going to be at least until next year that he takes a major? And the major, of course, has to be a Liquipedia major. It can't be a Mickey Mouse major. If he had won something like CEO over Wizrobe, that'd be nice, but I don't think we would have called that a major, right? But
Yeah,
I'm talking about, bona
I've
fide.
seen some people call it a major. I don't think when I was like casting it and like at the time, I don't think anybody was really considering it a major. I have heard some people after the fact, maybe not a major, but a major event. um,
I want to see what Wikipedia calls it, but please continue. Like I'm talking about,
yeah,
like
I think CEO's a little bit weird because it's not. It definitely doesn't fit the criteria for major that we would normally use, but it still had Hungry Box and Wizrobe and J Mook. That's 3 top 10 players. And then just outside of top 10, you had Moth, Crudo, Panda. So
it says no tier. Oh,
say it again.
it says no tier, and I'm like,
No tier? That's
oh snap!
disrespectful.
Oh snap!
That's disrespectful. Wizrobe had to beat J-Mook and H-Box for an event they're not even going to tier?
I think that their lowest tier is major. I don't think they like mess with regionals. I know Ultimate has like 10 tiers or whatever, but I think for Melee,
and they got like an algorithm for it too and whatnot.
Yeah.
You see people min-maxing, like genuinely, I forget who it was that was like talking about this, but like they were like talking about the TO meta for your events, like for Ultimate, right? And they're like, dude, just fly out all the Mexican players. Their plane tickets are cheap, and you can get a really quick and easy major if you get all the Mexican players out there. And it's just like, God, what the? They're min maxing their event now. Like what?
I love that. I love that. They don't show the tier level on the Liquipedia all tournaments.
As
Interesting,
far as
interesting.
HBox winning an event, I don't know. It feels like, to me, it both simultaneously feels like it's far away and that it could happen at any moment. I don't know how to describe it. I think you can never count HBox out. But the Melee landscape is so difficult that it's hard to say like when it can happen, right? And just because HBox hasn't had anything like recent to like hang on to, right? I think HBox has to. Oh, I forget who it was I was talking about it before, but I really like the recognition that you can't like discount someone's like win, like bracket run, just because they avoided a couple of bad matchups, right? In this day and age of Melee, every single major win includes a little bit of bracket luck. You know, you have to have some things break your way, right? You have to be a little lucky in order to be able to win a major. It's people are so good, and the parity is like so consistent, and like everyone is just like at that like same level so persistently that a lot of times it's just basically a roll of the dice who's going to be winning that day, right? You know, who's a little bit hotter, who didn't do a tournament winner like on the last stock of game 2, right? And that ended up like, you know, blowing the whole set like out of control. It's so difficult to say. I think the biggest issue that HBox has right now is probably Zane. If he can figure out a way to get back like to dealing with Marth and Zane again, I think it becomes a lot easier. If he can manage to avoid Zane in a bracket, I think HBox can win any major at any point right now. I think Zane is like the biggest like hurdle for him right now.
And then let's see, maybe one more, because I like the idea of who could win their first major, but we did talk about that from Moki's perspective a little bit,
Yeah.
so we can let that to rest. Maybe that this, if triples continues to be worked on, shout outs to DC, who is the person who works on triples. If triples starts to become a thing, and let's say it goes beyond crews, or it maybe even gets beyond doubles, would you call someone, because we have top 100 players who get top 100 because they're a good doubles player. There's not a lot of them. There might be like a few on the top 100 every year. Could a mostly triples player enter in the top 100 just on triples results if it gets big enough?
If it gets big enough, yeah, I guess. Could you give me an example of someone that is only top 100 because of their doubles resume?
Or mostly because of their doubles resume?
Mostly, yeah. Because I feel like even if it's mostly, I feel like there's still enough there on their singles resume to justify them being top 100. But I could be wrong.
2023. I'm gonna have to do some research because I have not looked at the rank for 2023 in a hot minute. Oh,
Yeah, I don't think that a lot. I think anyone that is like super like if you like well I think the best example is PPU, right? PPU is part of the greatest doubles team arguably of all time, right? You know, PewFat, if they're not the best one, they are like in the conversation for being the best team ever, right? SFAT was at one point like rank 5 or rank 6, something like that. Is that right? You know, SFAT was at that upper echelon, but PPU was never at that point, right? PPU was always like top 20 or something like that. Still amazing, 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 but not nearly as good as his doubles placement. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that I think if you are really, really cracked at doubles, that there's only so low you can be on your singles resume, right? I don't think that there's anyone out there that is that's why I wanted an example. I can't think of anyone that I would consider top like 10 even in doubles that wouldn't like qualify for, you know, top 100 in some form or fashion. I think the skill just like has to be there in doubles. And a lot of that would translate into singles or
I know
triples.
who Shop is. Never mind. No, I can't find anybody who is on here specifically because of doubles. As it turns out, I just thought that there was. I Nelson Mandela'd it in my brain. I'm so sad too. I like doubles enough
I
that
understand what you're trying to say, right? But I think in that example, like PPU, like the disparity between how good he was in singles and doubles was not that far. He went from the best team in the world to like top 20, which is still insanely good, right? I think it would be the same for triples. I think if someone got really cracked at triples, they would probably already be good at singles. But that's the thing. Maybe that's what gets them to actually start playing singles, right? You never know how somebody is going to get that spark lit up that makes them want to play. And maybe triples is the thing that finally gets them out of their house and go into a local. And then, we start hearing about the ballad of, little Bobby entering his first triples tournament and then becoming a melee superstar in singles. You never know. You never
Singles
know.
will always be king, and I'm not a hater on singles. I love singles, but I really like doubles as well. So I wish that it got at least streamed a bit more on Fridays and Saturdays, because maybe, just maybe, top 8 doubles is a little bit more captivating than round 1 pools and singles. Maybe. I don't know. Could just be me. Hada says hello in chat, by the way.
Oh, hello, Hada. How's it going?
Big XIF, Peach Legend. That's who you are, and more, as we've been getting into tonight. Yes, this does feel like an appropriate time to sign off. You've been rubbing your eyes, so I know you're having fun, but it is getting late. To the people in the world who are following and haven't already just been reading up on everything about you while we've been talking, please tell them where you can find you. Any last thoughts you would like to share? The floor is yours.
Yeah, so if you want to know a little bit more about me, or if you want to listen to my dumbass opinions, you can find me on Twitter. I am at the XIF. That is the XIF. I don't know. I post a lot of nonsense, but I like to tell a lot of stories about Melee and just a lot of like my time with the game. That is a big portion of what I post about on my Twitter. So if you have any interest in Melee in general as it is today, and some of the larger context of what it is and the history of Melee from someone that has been through every single era of Melee that it has to offer, and been around all different types of people involved with the scene. Just I've done it all. I've entered, I've TO'd, I have done commentary, I did doubles, I did singles, I played a bunch of different characters. I even did home run contests and break the targets. I've like dabbled in like a little bit of the speedrunning and one player stuff for Melee. And when I was a kid, 100% of the game. I got all the trophies. So, I low-key feel like a lot of people these days should be required to play the game and get everything in the game before before they start going to locals.
No. Before they're allowed to go on unranked, they need to do that. We want you at the locals, but if you're
the locals is open for everyone. Yeah. No, if you want to post an opinion about Melee on Twitter.com, I need to see your memory card first.
I need to see that go outside message on your memory card. Oh my gosh.
Right?
100,000 hours, is that what it takes? I think that's, or 100,000 matches maybe.
Yeah. Genuinely, I love being able to do this. I do not take for granted my time or my place within the scene. I am eternally grateful for the opportunities that I've been given, the people that I've met, the life that I've been able to live, because I've been involved with Melee and met so many amazing people and made so many great memories. So if I had any closing words, it would be to go to your locals, even if it's not Melee, for whatever game that you play. Go out there and meet people face to face, play games together, enjoy yourself, and just be an unapologetic nerd about your passions. That's all I've got.
For me, you're already here this late in the game. Or do people go to the end of podcasts like they go to the end of a chapter book to see what happens? Anyway, it's been a fun journey with you, Ziff. I've been really... I love talking Melee, as you can hear and tell. But when I get to hear history, when I get to speak to someone who has been around for much longer than I have, it means a lot to me. There's something mythological happening when someone stays in a scene for long enough. So that's you. It's been a real pleasure. To the people who are listening and watching, you can probably listen to this or watch the podcast in other ways in case you didn't know. There's a link tree in the description where you can go check that out. You can hop in the Discord server and count with me if you really want to. But when it comes to the Melee stuff, there is, as we've been saying, more Melee to be played. There's stuff like Let's Make Moves happening in, I think, somewhere in the October or November timeline.
First weekend of November. It's November 1st through 3rd.
See, there we go. And you know, if someone says to Ziff from Let's Make Moves, we'd like you to commentate, and you live near Miami, or heck, if you live like within 10 hours and drive to Let's Make Moves, you might see somebody like Ziff there. And how cool would that be? And then to see potential Melee history be made. And then, of course, get to play the game yourself. So I would urge you to do the same. I would also urge you to drink water. Hada likes to say that as well. Drink water, treat yourself, love yourself.
Definitely going to get some water after this. I'm parched.
This is longer than a commentary block. We've been working you hard over here. So yes, Ziv, to the viewers, listeners, thank you all for joining in on the podcast here tonight. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.